children will have horses like you do.
Eso, eso no estoy seguro.
No, I'm not sure about it.
Mientras yo esté, sí van a estar ahí. Luego,
As long as I'm here, they will be there. But after that, I don't know.
That's a bit sad.
No, sí, que si pierde esto no es una pérdida.
It's a loss not only for my family, for my people, it's also for the region, because that's our culture, that's our heritage, and that's unique.
That's Assignment with the Wild Horses of Galithia. I'm John Murphy, and working with me was Esperanza Escribano.
That was Assignment from the BBC. I'm Saroja Coelho, and this is CBC Radio 1. Have a great day.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa with our team at Information Radio. This is CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube this morning. Well, it's 5 degrees and a little bit frosty. Our colleagues at Radio Canada on the French Morning Show, we always touch base before we both go to air. And the producer there was saying it was the first morning that he could see his breath. And you might as well. It's actually going to rain today. So it's going to be cloudy in Winnipeg, rain beginning this morning in the city, and amounts of 5 to 10 millimeters expected in the city of Winnipeg. Brandon looking for 10 to 20 millimeters. And then in Thompson, cloudy with a mix of sun and cloud this afternoon and a high of 13. So the rain is in a system that's moving across southern Manitoba. Welcome to the show. As I said, I'm Marcy Marcusa. Let's say good morning to the team. Abby is directing the show this morning, Abby Adiyemi, and also will be on air covering your commute. Also, Mr. Brad Lillies is waving hello on YouTube this morning. He is producing our stream there if you're watching the show live. And we will continue to cover the story of students returning to school across this province. I think it's 15 more divisions that will go back for their first day with students today. Let's get into the news headlines. Heather Wells is here ahead of World Report to find out what's happening in Manitoba. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, talking about school, a private Manitoba university says it was forced to sell land and cut courses because it's not being given enough spots from the province for international students. Providence University College enrolled about 1,000 new international students a year before the federal government implemented that 2-year cap on students from other countries. That was in 2024. Well, this year it only received 90 spots from the province, while bigger publicly funded universities and colleges received more. Some Winnipeggers are sounding the alarm over rising ER wait times this week. This after the Manitoba government launched a team back in May to try to cut wait times in ERs. We'll hear from some patients in our next local news at 6:30.
All right. Thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
Well, we had a feature interview with Manitoba's Education Minister yesterday. Spent about 20 minutes with her post-show. We have broken that up into 2 pieces. So we're going to start the show with that. You sent CBC questions for Tracy Schmidt. We'll hear some of her answers. We're starting with hearing about the province's plans for improving ventilation in schools. A number of you wrote about that. And then later we'll hear the rest of what she has to say on other issues. But right now, World Report.
Today on Q with Tom Power. The legendary Billy Idol is back with his 9th studio album, and on it he looks back on his life and career chronologically. Songs documenting his early days, his massive breakthrough, his drug addiction, and finally his rebirth. He'll be here to tell you about it all. That's coming up on Q, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. The Trump administration is taking the fight over tariffs to the Supreme Court. It filed an appeal late last night asking the U.S. top court to reverse a lower court decision. It said most of President Donald Trump's tariffs were illegal. The CBC's Aaron Collins is in Washington this morning. Aaron, what is the Trump administration arguing here?
Right. So just a quick reminder, this is all a reaction to a ruling that says Trump's sweeping tariffs are, well, illegal. Just to rewind a bit, the president justified imposing these sweeping tariffs using something called the International Economic Powers Act. It's a mouthful. The court said that was illegal, and in theory, that could be a very pricey problem for the U.S., which could be forced to pay back all of the cash collected so far. So what's happening now? And no real surprise here, Donald Trump Trump is challenging that ruling in the Supreme Court, saying that striking down his tariffs would be devastating to the U.S. economy. And he says it would actually be bad for his attempts to stop conflicts in Europe and the Middle East, too.
The tariffs are vital to the success of this country. When I say I ended 7 wars, at least half of those wars were ended because of the power of tariffs.
All right, so Trump arguing his tariffs are essential not just to the U.S. economy, but to the country's foreign policy as well. Of course, the big question for Canadians is, what does this mean for their trade dispute with the U.S.? And the answer there, it's not as much as you might hope. Most of Canada's exports to the U.S. are still covered under CUSMA. That's the Canada-U.S.-Mexico trade agreement. Something north of 80% are still tariff-free. And the areas of the Canadian economy that are really being hit hard are the steel and aluminum sectors, which aren't covered here and were imposed using a different law. So no matter what happens with this challenge, those tariffs are going to stick around.
Thanks so much, Aaron.
You bet.
The CBC's Aaron Collins in Washington. Prime Minister Mark Carney and his government are trying to forge a new relationship with the United States, and they will get some insider advice today at their cabinet planning session in Toronto. The head of a prominent conservative think tank, Kevin Roberts, knows the Trump administration's playbook, and he was invited to discuss trade issues. Cabinet will also hear from Kevin Rudd, Australia's ambassador to the United States. Portugal is observing a national day of mourning for the victims of a funicular crash. At least 17 people are dead and 21 others injured. The funicular railway car derailed yesterday. As Megan Williams reports, a Canadian is among those injured.
A Portuguese emergency spokesperson lists off the nations of those injured Wednesday night when a car belonging to the popular Lisbon funicular railway derailed and turned over. Among them is a Canadian, yet to be named. Authorities say the 19th century funicular car jumped the track on a steep hill, slammed into a building, and crumpled with what one witness described as brutal force. The Gloria Line is a national monument and one of Lisbon's most popular tourist attractions, carrying about 3 million passengers each year. Today, flags are flying at half-mast across Portugal as the country observes a day of mourning and as police investigate what caused Lisbon's worst disaster in decades. Megan Williams, CBC News, Rome.
Security guarantees for Ukraine is the focus of today's meeting of the Coalition of the Willing. France is hosting leaders from the 30 countries forming the informal alliance. They are being joined by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. A big question is whether the coalition will deploy troops to Ukraine if there is a ceasefire. Russia has already warned it will not accept foreign troops in Ukraine under any circumstances. But NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte says that doesn't matter.
Why are we interested in what Russia thinks about troops in Ukraine? Russia has nothing to do with this. Ukraine is a sovereign nation. If Ukraine wants to have security guarantee forces in Ukraine to support a peace deal, it's up to them. Nobody else can decide about it. And I think we really have to stop making Putin too powerful.
Yesterday, Vladimir Putin said he is willing to keep fighting to achieve all Russian objectives if Ukraine does not agree to a deal. Water bombers are being built in Canada again after a decade-long hiatus. 2025 has been another intense wildfire season, and demand for the aircraft is soaring around the world. The CBC's Josh McLean has more.
On a factory floor near Calgary, a work in progress. The skeleton of a DHC-515, the latest incarnation of the aerial tanker popularly known as the Super Scooper.
It's really exciting for us to be bringing the aircraft back into production.
Neil Sweeney is with de Havilland Aircraft of Canada. De Havilland acquired the design after Bombardier stopped making the plane back in 2015. After years of planning, production of an updated version began in October.
We're getting right at it to build them.
A hot commodity on a warming planet where the threat of wildfires is growing. European countries ordered the first 22 planes, meaning Canadian provinces who ordered late will have to wait.
We need those bombers today.
Mike Flanagan is a wildfire researcher in British Columbia.
Water bombers can buy you time, especially when the conditions are extreme like we've been seeing.
Manitoba and Ontario have both announced plans to buy the new aircraft. The first planes are slated to come off the line in 2028. Josh McLean, CBC News, Calgary.
A cult leader who calls herself the Queen of Canada is now in police custody. Romana Didulo and her followers were living in a former school in a small Saskatchewan village. The RCMP raided that building yesterday and arrested 16 adults. Jeffrey Tram has the details.
Leave the phone down. You're under arrest. All right.
She calls herself the Queen of Canada, and now she's in police custody. Romano Didulo's arrest was captured by her phone in a live stream. Didulo was one of 16 adults taken by Saskatchewan RCMP after they received a report of a firearm. A search warrant was executed at a former school in the village of Richmond, located 365 kilometers west of Regina. Inspector Ashley St. Germain is with the RCMP.
We have located and seized 4 replica handguns, 1 inside the building and 3 inside vehicles.
The news comes as a relief for Richmond resident Vanessa Johnson.
This is the best day of my life right now. Like literally, it's so great that we have finally gotten some movement.
Didulo and her followers have been in Saskatchewan for 2 years. Her group stems from a larger QAnon movement. Christine Sarteski is an expert on cults at Chatham University.
The idea of QAnon has evolved over the years, but it's essentially people who believe that there is a group of secret people who are running the government.
Sarteski says followers of the Saskatchewan cult believe Didulo is the ultimate authority.
She is effectively the supreme ruler of all the land.
RCMP won't confirm if the 15 others taken into custody with Didulo are followers. They say the investigation is in its early stages. Jeffrey Tram, CBC News, Regina.
We have 2 closely watched elections to tell you about this morning, one in South America, the other in the Caribbean. My World Report co-host John Northcott is following all of it for us this morning. And John, let's begin in Guyana with what some are calling the most potentially consequential election in the region in decades.
Marcia, Guyana has been an independent country for almost 60 years, but it's the last few years that have proved so consequential in its history. One of the poorest countries in the region. About 10 years ago, huge crude oil reserves were identified there. They were so big that Guyana now has the largest oil reserves per capita in the world, growing Guyana's national revenues by almost 5 times. The task of managing that huge windfall for his people will fall to the newly re-elected president of Guyana, Irfan Ali. He has the huge responsibility of making sure those oil resources benefit the 800,000 people who live in the country. Complicating the situation, Guyana's neighbor, the also oil-rich but volatile Venezuela. Just before the vote, in fact, a boat carrying elections officials and ballots was shot at from territory rich in resources that is claimed by both countries.
And to the north, another incumbent claims victory. In Jamaica, Andrew Holness has won a 3rd term. Tell us more.
Marcia, the Jamaican Prime Minister won in what was a tight race. The issues the country faces are long-standing: crime and the economy. But Andrew Holness promised to double the minimum wage and to introduce income tax reforms. He also ran on his record. He pointed to, in particular, his war on crime, with killings down in some areas by as much as 70%. But some of his tactics, such as imposing states of emergency, have been criticized as heavy-handed, with advocates calling for a balance between security and civil rights. Marcia, 2 parts of the world whose leaders have fresh mandates and some long-standing challenges.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
My World Report co-host John Northcott with me in studio. That is the latest national and international news from World Report. If you like the World Report podcast, please follow us and tell a friend. It helps spread the word. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Marcy Marcusa. It is school day number 2. Thanks for joining us here on Information Radio. We're in your CBC studios live in downtown Winnipeg on 89.3. This is your morning show. You might also be watching on YouTube, so wherever you're joining us, thanks for being here. It is already raining in the province. We're going to get more in southern Manitoba. It's raining in the Paw. It is raining in Dauphin this morning. In Winnipeg, we're expecting a good dump. We'll get into that in a moment. This hour on the show, we are going to hear from Manitoba's Education Minister. We'll begin in moments. We'll find out about the province's plans for improving ventilation in schools, and that came from your questions. You sent CBC questions for Tracy Schmidt. Later this morning, we'll hear about cell phone bans, artificial intelligence, and violence in the classroom. But as I mentioned, we're going to start with improving ventilation. Also, if you think softening housing prices in this country have benefited renters, you might want to think again. There's a new report out about that today. We'll dig into it. Right now, Heather Wells is in with our news headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, shoppers at the Unicity Walmart say they're not surprised by an armed robbery at that store on Tuesday, but they are surprised by the age of the suspects. Police say 4 teenagers, one as young as 13, filled backpacks with merchandise, and when a security officer tried to stop them, one suspect shot at the security guard with an air gun, just missing his head. We'll hear from an area resident coming up. And the MLA for Interlake Gimli hopes cooler heads prevail over whiskey. This week, Ontario's Premier Doug Ford poured out a bottle of Crown Royal in protest over an announced bottling plant closure near Windsor. This, while the distiller is still making its whiskey at other locations, including Gimli. The MLA says if Ontario is considering pulling any whiskey from its store shelves, it should be Jack Daniel's. We'll hear more coming up in our next local news at 6:30.
All right. Thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
Well, I mentioned it's raining in the Pas as well as in Dauphin this morning, and in Brandon it's raining as well. So Brandon's 5 degrees. In Winnipeg, it is 6 degrees. We're mostly cloudy. We're going to get rain later. And in Thompson, mostly cloudy and 4 degrees. Brief look at your forecast here. Winnipeg, 5 to 10 millimeters of rain. That will begin later this morning. Our high is only 10 degrees, so we stay below normal. We will be better next week in terms of warmth, but not right now. Brandon, you're also obviously getting rain right now, but you expect 10 to 20 millimeters in this system for you. Winds will be north 40 to 60 and a high of 11 degrees. And up in Thompson, no rain in your forecast, just cloudy, mix of sun and cloud this afternoon and a high of 13. All right, let's set up your day for what's going on in the morning commute. Abby Adiemi's covering that.
Good morning, Marcy. Traffic, just the regular 6 a.m. traffic still out there. However, we got a call already from Alex saying lights flashing 4 ways at Portage and Maury. Portage at Maury, rather. It's not too bad now, according to Alex, but he says as you get into the day and traffic flow comes to that part of the city, you should expect some delay. So light flashing 4 ways at Portage at Maury. Take that into consideration as we still experience this steady traffic across the city. And do remember, it's still back to school and kids might be, they might not hear or see you coming. So take into consideration that the kids will be on the way. Either you're riding your bicycle or you're driving or you're one of those e-bikers. Just remember, watch your speed, obey the stop signs, follow school bus rules and the school zone limits, which is at 30 from Mondays to Friday from 7 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. Construction still at the regular spots across town from Osborne Village. We're also tracking something around southbound Pembina Highway to eastbound Abenoji, making a ramp. The ramp will be closed around 9 o'clock this morning for 2 hours. So if you're planning to head out around that time, expect some delays. But if you see anything, let us know. 788-3093.
So as I mentioned, we asked you for the first week back at school to send us questions from Manitoba's Minister of Education, Tracy Schmidt. Now, yesterday after the show, I connected with her via Zoom. Later this morning, we're going to hear the bulk of that interview. But we wanted to start the show with one subject that actually came up 3 times, multiple times. So listener Walter Chan wrote in asking, what is the government's policy and the school board's policy on COVID-19? And then we got this call.
Ask her what the schools are doing to mitigate the spread of airborne pathogens. COVID is still around, and we also know we have incredibly effective measures against airborne pathogens. We can reduce, with filters and UVC, we can reduce the spread. I was just wondering if you could ask her if the province had any plans to attempt to mitigate those airborne pathogens. Thank you.
And then we got an email about the issue. And that is, which is you're about to hear, that is what I read to Minister Tracy Schmidt. We got an email that I want to read you because I want listener questions in here as much as possible. So Alex Rupart wrote, Minister Schmidt, I'm a parent of 2 children. My 11-year-old son Theo was sick 9 times last school year, constantly falling behind. My 8-year-old daughter Sophia is now disabled due to long COVID and can no longer attend school full time. She contracted her most recent COVID infection, which disabled her in school last fall. He goes on to write about absences in school due to illnesses. He says, I'm deeply concerned about the provincial government's apparent refusal, his language, to acknowledge the ongoing risks from airborne viruses like measles, COVID-19, influenza, and RSV. His question is, what concrete actions will your ministry, he writes, take this school year to reduce airborne transmission in classrooms, specifically around ventilation, filtration, masking, or public health messaging?
Yeah, I think it's a very important question. I think that Manitoba students and parents recognize that the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic are still being felt in so many ways in our classrooms. I can share with that parent that our government has announced 11 new schools that we will be building. We are ensuring that all of those schools going forward, including the 3 new schools that are opening this year, 2 in Sage Creek and 1 in the beautiful community of Steinbach, all of the schools in Manitoba going forward will have the highest of standards for their HVAC and air ventilation systems.
And I'll interject, and you know what I'm going to say. What about retroactively for all those old schools then? What are your government's plans to help them with filtration? And which is a tougher thing because you're doing it after the fact. Are there plans on the book to look at that?
We are making important capital investments to make sure that schools that have prioritized HVAC updates are getting those updates. We know that there's a lot of work to do when it comes to air quality, not just for when we're talking about communicable disease, but also when we're talking about wildfire smoke. And I just want to take a brief moment, Marcy, to recognize all of the many Manitobans that have been impacted and continue to be impacted, both by wildfire evacuations, but also the impacts of the air quality and wildfire smoke. So it's of highest priority for our government. We are doing the work going forward, and we're going to do our best to support school divisions in making those capital investments to improve their air quality. I also just want to take a quick moment to encourage all parents to review their child's vaccine schedule, and if your child is due, to consider getting them a COVID-19 vaccine, a measles vaccine. It is an important part of a safe and healthy return to school.
Would you consider masks at schools being mandatory again ever, or at least available at the door? And you mentioned that you are working and supporting divisions in existing schools with air quality, but can you give me an example of a school that might be retrofitting to improve their air quality, or do we not have that in the works yet?
We have, Marcy, I know absolutely that there are schools on our list this year for HVAC upgrades. Unfortunately, I don't have the names of those schools right in front of me, but I can assure you that that is a priority for our government for this year. Certainly when it comes to what sort of, heaven forbidding, future pandemic response we might need, we would obviously follow the guidance of, Dr. Brent Rusin and our medical professionals here. Safety, the health and safety of students in Manitoba is my number one priority and is the number one priority of our government.
So that is just a taste of Tracy Schmidt answering your questions, the Minister of Education, responding to, in that case, COVID-19 policies and improving ventilation in schools this fall, although we'll have to do some follow-up questions to get that list of where those improvements will be made to existing schools. Now, as I alluded to at the top of the clock, the bulk of our interview, there's 15 minutes coming from you on a number of different topics, is coming up in the next hour of the show. The Minister of Education responding to questions about violence in schools, the cell phone ban, AI in the classroom, and how to add supports for students with learning disabilities. So that is coming up here on CBC's Information Radio in our 7:30 half hour. Time right now is 6:20.
Jan Arden, legendary singer-songwriter, captivates her audience in a legendary venue.
Welcome to Massey Hall.
Jan Arden, with an evening of original hit songs and some of her favorite pop covers from her latest album, Mixtape. Jan Arden, CBC Live at Massey Hall. Watch free on CBC Gem.
Thank you.
Breaking news happens anywhere, anytime.
Police have warned the protesters repeatedly, get back.
CBC News brings the story to you as it happens.
Hundreds of wildfires are burning.
Be the first to know what's going on and what that means for you and for Canadians.
This situation has changed very quickly.
Helping make sense of the world when it matters most. Stay in the know. CBC News.
6:21 a.m. Thursday, September 4th. Let's talk about who's going back today. 13 more divisions will have students back in school, many of them in the rural areas of Manitoba. So Hanover, Interlake, Lord Selkirk, Manitoba Institute of Trades and Technology, Mountain View, Mystery Lake, Pine Creek, Prairie Rose, Red River Valley, Rolling River, Seine River, Turtle River, and Whiteshell, all back to school today as students continue to get into those classrooms and practicing, right? Because at some point in just a couple of months, we're probably going to be doing list for storm closures. It is Manitoba. So, but good luck today if you're heading back, if it's day one for you in the classroom. It is on the cycle, by the way, though, school day number 3, actually, here in Manitoba. Well, next on the show, let's talk about housing. If you're looking for an affordable apartment somewhere in the country this fall, it won't be easy. Even though rents and costs of houses have gone down ever so slightly, they're still far from affordable, according to a new report. And as you heard, when we learned about the cost of housing recently, we had an interview on the show last week. Here in Manitoba and in Winnipeg specifically, we bucked that trend anyway. Our houses were going up in cost here. Now, the Centre for Policy Alternatives posts that you actually need, when it comes to rent, an hourly wage of about $38 working full-time if you want to rent a one-bedroom apartment alone. Now, that is not possible if you earn minimum wage or slightly more. So what are Canadians doing, and how does Manitoba compare to the rest of the country? Well, David McDonald is with us via Zoom to talk about it. He's a senior economist for the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives. Good morning.
Good morning.
So big picture, I just mentioned, that it's going to be tough if you're on your own, you're trying to get into rent. Tell us more about that major finding.
Yeah, so we looked across the country at 62 different cities in Canada, and of those 62 cities, in only 8 could somebody working at minimum wage afford a one-bedroom apartment, and most of those were in Quebec. And so what that speaks to is the real crisis of affordability. If you're working at minimum wage, it's very unlikely you can afford a one-bedroom apartment without spending more than 30% of your income on rent. And that's going to put you in a real difficult situation. And this is a one-bedroom. I mean, if you've got kids and you're looking at a two-bedroom, it's even less affordable.
One of those cities was, though, Brandon, Manitoba. I need to mention that because, of course, that's in our province here. We do often buck trends around pricing, but it still doesn't mean that it's affordable. I'm wondering how you see things, how they've changed over the past couple of years regarding construction ramping up, because we continue to hear that there's more buildings and condos and houses in Canada that are being built. What's your sensibility of that?
Yeah, I mean, there was a ramp up. Interest rates have really tamped down on that. So higher interest rates, one of the major impacts that it has on the economy is actually through lower new home construction, although it takes a couple of years for that to really kick in. And we're seeing that now in terms of new homes and condo construction. The Trudeau government, as well as some provincial efforts, are now yielding some better apartment construction numbers when it comes to purpose-built rental. So that's offsetting it to some degree. But in the end, it remains a very difficult situation for folks. Huge spread between the cost of rent that's increased very rapidly over the last couple of years and minimum wages, which have increased, but not by nearly as much.
So what are people doing?
Well, so if you take a look at places like Winnipeg, for instance, you've got a minimum wage of just under $16 an hour. To afford a one-bedroom, it'd be $23 an hour that you need to make. To afford a two-bedroom, it's $29 an hour in Winnipeg. So you've got to be working more than one minimum wage job to afford even a one-bedroom apartment. We even looked at neighborhoods just to see if there were some pockets of affordability in big cities. So, for instance, in Winnipeg, we looked at 29 different neighborhoods. There is actually one neighborhood in those 29 that is affordable. A one-bedroom apartment is affordable at minimum wage. That's actually really good and extraordinarily unusual. In most big cities, there are 0 neighborhoods where the one-bedroom apartment remains affordable for a minimum wage worker. So what are folks doing? Well, they're certainly spending more than 30% of their income on rent. It's more like 40, 50, 60%. They're living with roommates. The younger folks are not moving out of homes not moving out of their houses because it's so expensive to rent. And older folks who might want to downsize are not moving out of their bigger houses and leaving them for new families because, again, it's too expensive to move into the rental market. And those are the good outcomes. The bad outcomes are much more concerning, where you pay your rent and you always pay your rent first, but you don't have enough money then for food. And so we've seen food bank utilization go through the roof over the last couple of years, even though the economy hasn't been terrible. And then the most severe consequence is homelessness. And so folks, for whatever reason, get out of their current housing situation. They've got a roommate they can't live with anymore and they have to move out. But then they can't get back in because rents have gone up so much. And so then you're in a situation, maybe you're living in your car, maybe you're couch surfing, and it's a lot harder to hold down a job when you're living out of your car. And that can really deteriorate rapidly. And so those types of food bank utilization and homelessness, we don't necessarily connect them to rent, but they are tightly connected to very unaffordable rents in most major cities now.
I've been reading the highlights from the report, but I was just furiously trying to click back and forth to identify the neighborhood you were mentioning where rent is still affordable. Do you recall the name?
I think it's Spruce, but I have to look it up again. There are a couple that are just over the line in Winnipeg. There's one that's just slightly under. So there are definitely some areas that are close to it, but it's not an easy situation for folks in Winnipeg.
Yeah, I was just looking for that because, of course, when you mention one neighborhood, everyone's going, which one? I don't recognize the name Spruce. So I'm going to look at the map, listeners. I'll find out and I'll get the name of that neighborhood. So I apologize for that. People might be wondering. Also, can you give us any sensibility about why Brandon might have bucked the trend, or maybe in a wider way? You looked at Quebec bucking the trend here. What are the factors that go into that then?
Yeah, so some of the smaller cities, they're smaller cities in Quebec. It's not Montreal. Places like Trois-Rivières and Sherbrooke and those sorts of places in Quebec. And Brandon is also part of that. It may be that these places are far enough from big centers that they're not seeing the big increases in rent that we're seeing in big centers. But even you think of Atlantic Canada, those places aren't particularly affordable either, even though we are seeing some pockets of affordability in some of the smaller towns. But these are real holdouts in my mind. Most of the country is completely unaffordable for folks that are working at the provincial minimum wage.
Tell us a bit about the prevalence of non-market and subsidized housing options. We know, because we've been doing a housing series here on our show, that they can't build them fast enough. So right now, how available are they?
Well, they're not that available. That hasn't primarily been the approach to housing that we have here in Canada. If we compare ourselves to other developed countries in the OECD, we're well below the average in terms of rent geared to income housing. We're well below the average in terms of non-market housing generally. In other places in Europe, it's quite common for folks to rent from public entities where you're paying rents that are not market rents driven by the market, but it's driven by what folks can afford and just paying the cost of that housing. That's just not that common in Canada. And so a lot of the new housing that's coming online is for-profit housing in essence. And so you've got a profit margin built into that you've got to pay for as the renter. You've got to pay the mortgage in essence. So it's unfortunately not nearly as common as it should be and as it is in other places in the developed world.
Thank you very much for giving us a snapshot of this, David. Appreciate your time.
Sure thing. Thanks for having me.
That is David McDonald with us live on CBC as senior economist for the Centre for Policy Alternatives. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thanks so much for joining us this morning on CBC. We are heading into news time at 6:30, and then we'll have business news with Hallie Cotnam coming up. Today, Hallie's going to be looking at jobs numbers. She's also going to be talking about the temporary work program, a worker program that's back in the headlines, and we'll find out more about why. On the morning commute, things should be good. We're in the 6 o'clock early hour, so things are so far so good, so early, as I like to say. Beautiful sky out there if you're commuting. It's just, again, that shelf of cloud, but then underneath it, we've got some bright sky right now. It is a little red. And what do they say? Red sky in the morning, sailors take warning. That's because it's going to rain. And that actually is true today. So we'll talk about the forecast coming up after your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:30, grab your mittens, maybe an umbrella, because we're cold to start the day. We are at 4 degrees at the airport at 6 downtown. Rain 5 to 10 millimeters today and a cool high of 10. More rain expected in western Manitoba today. After opposition from area residents, Premier Wab Kinew says his government will look for a new location for a proposed supervised consumption site. Last November, the province and Aboriginal Health and Wellness Centre submitted a licensing request to Health Canada for a site at 200 Disraeli Freeway. The idea quickly came up against resistance from people in the area who say the location was too close to schools, a child care centre, and some homes. Yesterday, Premier Wab Kinew says the province will bring forward a new location for people to consider. The site would allow people to inject drugs with staff on hand to respond to any overdoses and also guide people to treatment. Kinew says too many Manitobans are dying from overdose, and this is one way to improve things. Frequent shoppers at the Unicity Walmart say they are not surprised by an armed robbery on Tuesday. Winnipeg police say 4 teenagers filled backpacks with merchandise. When a security officer tried to stop them, a suspect shot at him with an air gun, just missing his head. Jessica Angel has lived in the area for 20 years.
We don't come, even my 7-year-old son wants to come and get pop or whatever in the night, and nope, like after 8:30, forget it. Like, he's not coming here to shop.
2 13-year-olds, a 15-year-old and a 17-year-old, face several charges, including armed robbery. Some Winnipeggers are sounding the alarm over rising ER wait times this week. This after the Manitoba government launched a team in May tasked with cutting waits in ERs. Arlene Kennington went to the Health Sciences Centre's ER on Tuesday, but left after waiting 8 hours. She says she still didn't feel well yesterday and was told to go back and wait again.
Phoned my doctor this morning. She says, no, you have to go back and wait. It doesn't matter if it's 20 hours. And I know people here yesterday were waiting 20 hours.
In an email, the WRHA says there's often a temporary surge in volume in emergency rooms following a long weekend. The Manitoba Nurses Union says in Winnipeg, nurses have seen ER wait times continue rising over the last 2 months. A private Manitoba university says it was forced to sell land and cut courses because it's not being given enough spots from the province for international students. Providence University College enrolled about 1,000 new international students a year before the federal government implemented a 2-year cap on students from other countries. This year, it received 90 spots from the province, while bigger publicly funded universities and colleges received more. Providence President Kenton Anderson says it received 30 more spots when it pressed the province for the space not being used by public universities.
They prioritize the publicly funded schools, which I understand. But if the publicly funded schools aren't going to use their allocations, then, which they're not, then please, we can use them.
The province says it prioritizes public schools and labor market needs. The University of Manitoba says it saw a 30% drop in international students last year and has budgeted a 7.5% drop this year. Providence says it can fill those spots. Prime Minister Mark Carney and his Liberal cabinet will finish their meeting in Toronto today. They will hear from a prominent American conservative figure behind Project 2025, the blueprint that is shaping Republican politics in the U.S. as the Carney government tries to improve trade relations with the U.S. You can hear the latest national and international news coming up on World Report at 7. The PC MLA for Interlake Gimli says Ontario Premier Doug Ford should stop taking shots at Canadian-made whiskey. Ford dumped out a bottle of Crown Royal on Tuesday to protest an announced plant closure in his province. Multinational distiller Diageo will close bottling operations near Windsor, but it is still making whiskey at its other locations, including in Gimli. Derek Johnson understands Ford's frustration, but says Manitobans will support Ontario workers.
We still continue to support Ontario-made vehicles, so I guess I'm just reaching out and hopefully that provinces don't start fighting amongst ourselves and we don't cut off our nose to spite our face as Canadians.
Johnson says if Ontario is considering pulling any whiskey from its liquor stores, it should be an American whiskey. You can find the latest news updated throughout the day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right, thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
Well, small update here because we just talked to the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives about the price of rents, and it was looking across the country at what you would need to make for things to be deemed affordable. So with our minimum wage being right around $16, for a two-bedroom, $29, for a one-bedroom, $23. One of the neighborhoods they said, they cited in the interview, there was one neighborhood that was deemed affordable, just barely, but by the measurement they used. And we just couldn't come up with the name of it. We were clicking all over the map. So the guest has just emailed me. I also double-checked and verified on the map. That neighborhood is Point Douglas. There's also a neighborhood in the West End, Spence, pretty close to affordable in terms of a one-bedroom apartment at minimum wage, but a little bit over that line. Even still, obviously, across this country, rent's a huge challenge. And also the quality of what you're going to find for rental units remains a big challenge. I haven't asked about rent in a long time. If you're out there renting in Manitoba, what is it like for you? And particularly because Brandon also landed in the more affordable column in comparison to other cities, including Winnipeg. We're wondering whether or not you rent in Brandon and you have a story to share. You can always reach us at the show at 788-3205. All right, let's get into your weather forecast for the regional details now. It's 6:36 a.m. and it's going to rain. In fact, it is already raining in parts of the province. This morning, it's also cool. You're going to notice that as well. A lot of folks talking about seeing their breath in Winnipeg. I know I had the heat on in the car and my windows kind of fogged up, so differences in temperature. For the day today in Winnipeg, mainly cloudy. Rain this morning, 5 to 10 millimeters, a high of 10. Cloudy tonight, chance of showers overnight, really windy, and tomorrow a high of 15 degrees. By Saturday, mix of sun and cloud and 16, and it gets warmer from there. Right now, Winnipeg, mostly cloudy and 6. Brandon, it's raining now on you. It's 5 degrees. You're going to get 10 to 20 millimeters, and your high's 11. Tonight, showers continue. So do those gusty winds. They should calm down by tomorrow with a mainly sunny day. But then in the afternoon tomorrow, a 60% chance of more showers and a high of 13 tomorrow in Brandon. Again, Saturday and Sunday looking warmer, and it gets warmer into early next week for you in Brandon. In Thompson right now, mostly cloudy. 4 degrees is your current condition. You'll stay cloudy for the day with a high of 13. Tonight, partly cloudy, low 1. And then tomorrow, you're going to have a normal day, mix of sun and cloud, pretty straight ahead, and a high of 14. Normal as in nothing major in the forecast. And then it does warm up as well for you through the weekend with Monday's high could be around 20 if we get there and if the forecast holds. But if you're watching those maps on YouTube this morning, the weather maps, you can see those systems just entering Manitoba here. Abby is in with our commute news. What's happening in traffic, Abby?
Traffic, I'll call it the one before the rush hour, still moving steadily across the city. Typical morning, 6 a.m. traffic for this time. The only concern you should take into consideration would be at Portage and Murray. Traffic signals are flashing red for all directions this morning, so you need to treat it as a four-way stop and, proceed with caution. Other than that, just expect delays as expected in key areas and plan your route accordingly, and also take into consideration with the school year on the way. Kids might not hear you, they might not see you, or even understand traffic the way adults do. So if you're riding your bicycle, or you're a bike rider, or just a regular driver, just remember they are on the road. Construction still in key areas across the city. You see anything in traffic that you want to report, feel free to give us a call on 788-3093.
So I just took my sweater off because it's 24 degrees for some reason in the studio, so I'm just cooking.
I know.
But I realized, because I was off YouTube because they were showing you, and I just realized I was on main CBC network. So
yeah, you go on TV.
Sorry, everyone. All right, let's get into business news now. Hallie Cottenham joins us now with some of those stories. Hi.
Well, thank God. I mean, I know now I'm on TV, and I had to just sort of adjust my bra strap, and I'm like, wait a sec, I'm on TV.
I know. One morning I was eating a muffin, and I was like, oh my gosh, I thought I was off camera, and they were into the news. Live morning radio, folks.
There you go.
How we're
there
rolling.
you go.
Hallie, let's talk about job numbers to start this morning.
Well, the unemployment figures are due out tomorrow for both the U.S. and Canada, so I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. But yesterday, this indicator in the U.S. that has some economists worried, in part because the numbers are worse than expected. It's fewer job openings. In other words, fewer help wanted ads going up. That's according to data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. There were 7.2 million listings in July. That's down from 7.4 million the month before. And for the first time in more than 4 years, fewer open jobs than there are job seekers. Some folks are comparing these numbers to the kinds of numbers we saw during the pandemic. So that's worrying some economists. Now, closer to home, the Public Health Agency of Canada is cutting 10% of its employees. That's the equivalent of 320 full-time jobs. The so-called work adjustment letters going out next week. And this after the agency had already instituted a hiring freeze and had not renewed most contract employees. This is the agency that was so central to the health messaging during COVID, the coordination during the pandemic. Now, to be fair, during that time, it almost doubled in size from 2,300 employees in 2020 to 4,200 by 2022. So an agency spokesperson telling CBC this is a, quote, post-pandemic recalibration. It pointed out that this is not part of the government's plans to find efficiencies, which is a topic of conversation at that cabinet meeting that continues today. Marcy.
Let's go to another story. The temporary worker program is also back in the headlines. What's the latest there?
Yeah, if you missed this, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre wants the Liberals to scrap it. He says that the temporary foreign worker program is causing an employment crisis among young Canadians, ends up exploiting low-wage workers from poor countries. He's calling out fast food chains that he says are hiring foreigners over locals. He's mentioning Tim Hortons and Booster Juice specifically. Since he made those comments, Tim Hortons has responded saying that less than 5% of its workers are hired through the TFW program. So then in the afternoon, the Prime Minister was scrummed about Poilievre's comments. Carney says no, he's not going to scrap the TFW program, though he is committed to reducing the number of temporary residents relative to our population. He says the temporary foreign worker program fills a gap for employers who have trouble finding staff, especially in rural or remote communities. Now, lots of reaction pouring in to what Poilievre had to say. Dan Kelly heads up the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. He is open to adjusting levels of the program or tweaking the rules, but he says the idea of eliminating the temporary foreign worker program is, quote, ridiculous. And just to be clear, data from August show more than 33,000 new visas for TFWs issued in the first half of the year. An additional 70,000 visas were renewed for the workers who were already here.
And you have a bizarre story about a controversial ad for fast fashion giant Shein that might have some people leaning in going, is that who I think that is?
Exactly. Okay. So Shein is investigating how an image made it onto its website that featured what appeared to be Luigi Mangione modeling one of its shirts. Now, Mangione is the guy accused of killing a health insurance company executive last year. He is in custody. He's awaiting trial. He was indicted on first-degree murder charges, to which he's pleaded not guilty, by the way. So Shein has taken down this image, which showed this likeness of Mangione modeling a short-sleeve, button-down, flowered shirt. The company says the image was provided by a third-party vendor. It quickly began circulating on social media as people recognized Mangione, who you probably know has developed a cult following at protests. People are holding up these free Luigi signs, and supporters of him have donated more than $750,000 US for his defense. So lots of questions about where did this picture come from? Is it AI? Is it an edited photo? Like, how did it happen? Shein obviously trying to get to the bottom of this with a third party.
Bizarre indeed. All right. Thanks, Hallie. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Marcy.
That is Hallie Cotnam in with our business news this morning on CBC's Information Radio. You're on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on that app and on YouTube. I'm Marcy Marcusa with our team here at the show. In case you're wondering where Corey is, Corey's off the show this morning, actually, because he's going to be working on something special. Next week, we're doing our show live, next Wednesday morning, in fact, at Merchants Corner. Now, you might recall Merchants Corner right on Selkirk Avenue there was back in the day was the Merchants Hotel. And then it was transformed completely into an educational space with the resources. There's all kinds of different things going on in there. Beautiful space. place. People live there now, and it's really, really become a big part of the neighborhood. But also, it's a part of the neighborhood that those that are doing the work out of Merchants Corner want more people who live around that part of Winnipeg to know about. And so we're going to be there. We're going to be there live. We're going to be learning all about the successes and the challenges of the neighborhood, but also how Merchants Corner fits in. So that's next Wednesday morning. There's also going to be a community breakfast that's going to be put on by folks that are part of the Merchants Corner, but also part of the neighborhood. So we'll tell you more about it in the days ahead. But Corey's going to be working on some of our programming there, so that's why he's off the show today. 6:45 is our time right now. It's mostly cloudy, 6 degrees. We are expecting rain, and the trees might love the rain. Let's talk about those trees. I don't know if you've noticed this. I have certainly noticed this in Winnipeg, but even though it's early September, some trees are already starting to display their fall colors, but some trees are kind of like green. This is what I have in my property. And then there's just sort of a touch of orange and red here or there, and they look confused. Well, it turns out they might be confused. This year's hot, dry summer has something to do with it. The CBC's Preston Mulligan asked Jennifer Kershaw, an instructor with the Department of Biology at Acadia University, to explain.
It's a protective mechanism, and it's, when you think about a tree, they live many, many years. So a given summer doesn't matter very much because they, over their lifetime will have many, many seasons to grow. And so if they have one year where they, drop their leaves a bit early, no big deal. So what's happening for the plant is that, if we go to the beach and we get too much sun, it can cause damage to our cells. And it's the same thing for plants. If they don't have enough water moving through their bodies, they will start to produce something called a reactive oxygen species. And, we eat antioxidants to soak those up. And plants don't have quite the same, mechanism that we do. So if they build up in the plant cells, then that will start basically the process where they'll draw back all the nutrients and drop the leaves. Normally, that would be triggered by how long the night is, but this year, special occasion.
So, in a normal year, when you have the typical amount of rain and whatnot, what's happening to a tree this time of year? I guess later in the year that it starts to change colors.
Yeah. So, under normal circumstances, they have a different mechanism, so not the stress response. They have molecules in their cells called phytochrome, phyto for plant and chrome for color. And they're really similar to what's in our eyes. Almost exactly the same, really, just a slightly different molecule. And they change shape based on how much light there is. And so when they're not changing shape because the night's getting longer, there's more of a given form of that phytochrome, and it results in the plant having a whole kind of domino effect where the chlorophyll will stop being produced, so the green color goes away, and you can see the yellow that's underneath. And the yellow is actually because of compounds called carotenoids, which, if we eat beta-carotene, that we need for making vitamin A so our eyes are healthy, that's the same thing that's in those leaves. And the plant uses both chlorophyll and the carotenes to make sugar. So that color was always there, but now we can see it. And then I know the next thing you're probably thinking is, well, but where does the red come from, right?
Yeah, where does the red come from?
So the plant makes that compound, which is called anthocyanin, which is the same thing in beets or in flower petals. Is a kind of antifreeze, and that you get a lot more of that if you get a cold night and a warm day. So the plant can say, all right, well, I've got enough of this antifreeze to keep the cell going. Well, we still have nice days for making sugar, but got to survive those cold nights. So hopefully we'll get that balance of cold nights and warm days so we get nice colors, even if it is in early fall.
So that is part of the explanation to why you might see your trees only partly turning this year. I know that on our boulevard, the city planted a brand new tree. It's a maple. And I was out there because I'm kind of a tree nerd now. I take pictures. I put it through apps because I noticed the edges of the tree leaves started turning kind of a red and a yellow. And I thought, is this maple going to go full red, or will it be an autumn blaze that kind of has variation? But right now, it's kind of just confused because of the weather, as Jennifer Kershaw explained there. She's an instructor with the Department of Biology at Acadia, chatting with the CBC's Preston Mulligan. And this is something we do every fall. Abby and I were talking about it just now. We often ask you for your photos. We're a little early probably to have, those full trees fully changed. But if you already do have some gorgeous photos of fall, let's start our album early. You can radio 893 at cbc.ca them. That is, email them to radio 893 at cbc.ca.
You can sleep like a spy in a Paris auberge, room number 007. Indulge your inner caveman in a Catskills motel. Or enjoy a peaceful bed-in at a Regal Montreal hotel. You can check in, but you can never check out. Branded hotel rooms on Under the Influence with Terry O'Reilly. Thursday morning at 11:30, 3:30 p.m. in Newfoundland. And on the CBC Listen app.
We carry a world of information in our pockets because we want to know. Breaking news that shapes our world. Staying on top of stories around the globe. And connected close to home. It's news you can trust. Delivered when you want and where you want. On Canada's News app. Now with CBC Radio 1. Local and live. Download the CBC News app for free.
We've got a traffic issue this morning. Portage and Moray, traffic signals are flashing red in all directions, so treat that as a four-way stop. Proceed with caution. It can get pretty busy around Portage and Moray there. However, later in the morning, we'll see whether or not this is cleared up before traffic really picks up. But thank you, because we got a call about that one. And if you have any other updates on the traffic line that you want to give us, you can call 788-3093. And of course, the ongoing reminder to slow down in those school zones, and especially in rural Manitoba, your highways might be a bit busier in those drop-off zones and kids walking or biking, because across rural Manitoba, many of the divisions are back today. 13 more school divisions with schools back, students back in class today. Hopefully you brought an umbrella or some layers for this, because while we've got a gorgeous shot of the downtown sky right now that's got sun peeking through, we are expecting today to get rain. So 5 to 10 millimeters of rain expected in Winnipeg, and a high just of 10 degrees. Right now in the city, it's 6. It's raining in Brandon, 5. Brandon Thompson, it's mostly cloudy, it's 4. Gillam is -1. That's your cold spot. And George Island right now is your hot spot, and it is 10 degrees. Well, most social media platforms and cloud storage systems are owned by companies outside of Canada, but some say this is a security risk. So why am I talking about this morning? Well, yesterday, an open letter was published demanding the federal government take action to protect Canada's sovereignty in the digital sphere. 70 groups and individuals signed on to this, warning that Canada's reliance on foreign systems is a threat to our independence. Barry Appleton is spokesperson for the coalition of signatories. He's also an expert in international and digital trade, and with us now. Good morning.
Good morning.
So what are the key points that you're making in this letter?
Well, look, this open letter is really about one simple question. Who really governs Canada in a digital age? So right now, foreign tech giants, foreign governments hold the levers of power about what we see online, how data is used, even which Canadian companies succeed or fail. And empires used to be built on railways. I don't have to tell you, you understand more than anybody about the importance of railways. But today, they're built on algorithms. And unless Canada acts, we're really at risk of being tenants in somebody else's digital empire.
Acts how, though? I just have to interject, because, I mean, it feels like the horse is out of the barn. We can't catch up. So how can we act? What's the ask here?
Well, what do you mean we can't catch up? That's absolutely incorrect. Look, right now, American laws like the Cloud Act, they reach into Canadian data. Chinese-owned platforms shape what our kids watch and how they feel. And European laws affect how Canadian innovators are forced to build abroad because they have to follow European rules instead of ours. So over 70 prominent Canadians have banded together to call on Ottawa to actually do something now, which we're calling, first of all, a digital sovereignty framework that lets Canadians control our data, audit our algorithms, support Canadian innovation. Because if we don't have these types of rules, then it will be too late. But if we do something now, it's not too late. But we all think the internet is like, freedom of the sea, it's unregulated, but it's highly regulated. It's just we aren't regulating. And Canadians are at risk. Their privacy rights are at risk. Their political rights are at risk because Parliament has basically not gotten its butt in gear. It's time. Summer's over. time to actually do the hard work and do something here.
I think my comment about it being too late is sort of looking at having you help us understand, when you're talking about algorithms, you're talking about development of social media platforms, those things have been sort of developed over so many years that now there's two levels to what we're talking about, right? It's protection or separating from that sphere, and then it's creating our own algorithms, is it not? So what is the first step for better protection in your view?
Okay, well, first of all, we don't create algorithms. Government doesn't create algorithms. What we do is that we have transparency. We monitor the algorithm. And the reason we want to do that is that we actually think when we look online that we're picking what we want, but actually the algorithm is making a huge difference about selecting for us. And it's often doing that for its own purposes, not for the purposes of getting better information or things like that, but for keeping you longer onto the service. And they do that especially with, and really a big focus for kids, by keeping you enraged. The more rage you have, the longer you stay on. The more you're going to look at things and see things. And the more eyeballs they have, the more they can sell, or the more data they can collect about you. So it's getting the audit information. It's knowing what's in that black box. It's regulating what's there. It's knowing what goes on in the cloud. The cloud is what we need to be able to deal with, and AI. And so now is our chance to be able to do that. And it's not too late for that, but it will be too late very soon because all that data goes. Remember, we're all sending our kids back to school this week, and we all tell kids, don't put that on social media. If you post that picture, you'll never get it off. Well, that data is being collected, it's being aggregated. And so we need to protect the digital privacy. That's what's missing right now. That's what we have to be able to deal with. And that's one of the 14 recommendations in this open letter.
If more laws were in place and there weren't as much unchecked power, what would that mean for tech companies staying in Canada?
Well, look, this is not like healthcare that's a social service. These tech companies are in Canada because they're making so much money. Advertising revenues alone are $18.1 billion. In fact, when you really look at it, I think it's closer to 30 billion because it doesn't factor in advertising. It gives you sort of North American rights rather than just the US. So we only factor that in. So none of that's taxed. The tech giants do not pay tax on their Canadian advertising revenue. That was a decision made by the government. I make money, you make money, we all pay tax. What the hell's going on? Google pays a voluntary $100 million payment for online news. Meta doesn't pay a thing. So they're not doing this because they want to be nice to us. They're doing it because we're such a big market. And there should be Canadian competitors, and there should be Canadian innovators. And we should be focusing on all these things. We want to be Canada strong. We want to be more reliant. We want to be elbows up. Start with our digital household. Let's get that focused in. But there's lots of pieces, but we're doing nothing. And doing nothing is the problem right now. We have to do something, and we can't afford for that to wait any longer.
All right, Barry, thank you very much for the conversation. I appreciate you telling us about this letter and the ask. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
That's Barry Appleton with us live, expert in international and digital trade, joining us from Chicago, talking about the open letter that came out yesterday, published, demanding the federal government take action to protect Canada's sovereignty in the digital sphere. 70 groups and individuals are signatories. It is 3 minutes now to 7 o'clock. Let's go to Heather Welsh. She's here with our Manitoba headlines.
Good morning. Some Winnipeggers are sounding the alarm over rising ER wait times this week. The Manitoba government launched a team back in May tasked with cutting waits in the ER. Some patients outside the Health Sciences Centre yesterday tell CBC they saw people wait upwards of 20 hours for care on Tuesday. A private Manitoba university says it was forced to sell land and cut courses because it's not being given enough spots from the province for international students. Providence University College says it received just 90 spots from the province this year, while bigger publicly funded universities and colleges received more. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 7:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
We have the Education Minister on in the next hour of the program. She responded to questions that you sent in to us. We actually sat down with her via Zoom yesterday after the show. So today we're going to hear what she had to say about all kinds of different topics: cell phone bans, artificial intelligence, violence violence in the classroom, and more. So stay tuned to hear from Tracy Schmidt. Also, in the next hour of the show, now that we're in September, fall's around the corner, and of course this week has kind of shocked us a bit with this weather. It's cooler. We're wondering how your summer was. Did you get everything in that you wanted to do? Did it feel a little short for you? A lot of people are writing into us saying, yeah, it kind of did. It's 6 degrees only this morning, mostly cloudy, and we're waiting for rain. In traffic, be careful, Portage and Moray. Lights are flashing in a 4-way position. World Report is next.
Today on The Current.
Today, we have a similar debate over this. Anyone know what this is, class? Anyone? Anyone?
We launch a new series looking at the state of education in this country. Canada is lagging behind other G7 countries, and experts say our curriculum needs to adapt to a changing world. Our new series, Learning Curve, coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Officials in Portugal say a Canadian is among those injured in a Lisbon funicular crash. 17 people have died. 21 others were injured when the streetcar derailed and crashed into a building yesterday.
Uma situação trágica, não é? Porque isto acaba por ser uma situação trágica.
This woman lives in Lisbon and calls the incident a tragedy. One she says is not good for the city's image. The yellow and white Gloria streetcar is a popular attraction. It takes tourists up and down a 48-meter sloped street. Officials say people from Germany, Spain, and Morocco were also among those hurt. The cause of the crash still being investigated. Portugal is calling today a national day of mourning for the victims. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is in France for a meeting of the Coalition of the Willing. The group of about 30 countries, including Canada, is discussing security guarantees for Ukraine and the controversial issue of Western troops being deployed there. Crystal Gomansing has more.
Embracing like old friends, French President Emmanuel Macron and his Ukrainian counterpart Volodymyr Zelensky start a new day of talks in Paris. Some of the leaders from the Coalition of the Willing are attending the latest gathering in person, others virtually.
Thank you, colleagues, for joining. I see that everybody is now connected.
Before the start of the meeting, Macron said coalition leaders would endorse plans for security guarantees drawn up by their militaries. Regardless of how many of the more than 30 nations are prepared to commit troops on the ground in Ukraine, Russia won't support any foreign intervention. Today, Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova called the plan fundamentally unacceptable to Russia. But NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte gives a different perspective.
Why are we interested in what Russia thinks about troops in Ukraine?
Rutte was speaking earlier today at an international security conference in Prague.
Ukraine is a sovereign nation. If Ukraine wants to have security guarantee forces in Ukraine to support the peace deal, it's up to them. Nobody else can decide about it. And I think we really have to stop making Putin too powerful.
Yesterday in Beijing, Russian President Vladimir Putin vowed to keep fighting to achieve his objectives if Ukraine does not agree to a deal. Crystal Gomansing, CBC News, London.
In Afghanistan, Taliban officials say more than 2,200 people are now confirmed dead. They were killed by a magnitude 6 earthquake. Another 4,000 people were injured. It struck the mountainous eastern region earlier this week. U.S. President Donald Trump is taking his tariffs fight to the Supreme Court.
The tariffs are vital to the success of this country. When I say I ended 7 wars, at least half of those wars were ended because of the power of tariffs.
The Trump administration filed an appeal late last night. It wants the U.S. top court to reverse an appeals court ruling. The appeals court judges decided that most of the president's tariffs were illegal. The tariffs are still in place for now, but Trump says the ruling is harming trade negotiations and international relations. He is asking the U.S. High Court to intervene quickly. Here at home, Prime Minister Mark Carney and his government are still trying to forge a new relationship with the United States, and they will get some insider advice today at their cabinet planning session in Toronto. Tom Perry has more on how Carney is responding to the challenges from Washington.
We're going to focus on being efficient so we can build together and move forward.
As he kicked off his cabinet meeting yesterday, Prime Minister Mark Carney leaned hard into a few key issues, promising to bring in a budget that would include investment but also austerity.
So we need to rein in spending. We need to find efficiencies.
Carney as well, revealing he spoke to U.S. President Donald Trump this week about a wide range of issues, including tariffs and trade.
Don't expect immediate white smoke on one of these strategic sectors, but that's the type of conversation that we're having.
But while Carney was mapping out his government's priorities for the coming months, his main political rival was laying down his own markers.
The reality is that Mark Carney is failing.
Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre was in the Toronto area taking aim at the Prime Minister over his budget plans and dealings with the U.S. president.
He said he could handle Donald Trump, but ever since he became Prime Minister, he's been bullied and pushed around.
Poilievre, who lost his Ottawa area seat in the last election, will be back in the House of Commons when Parliament resumes after winning a safe Conservative riding in Alberta in a by-election. The Conservative leader looking to challenge the carefully laid plans of Carney and his ministers. Tom Perry, CBC News, Toronto.
Police in Kimberley, BC say 2 hikers are dead and a third is missing after falling over a waterfall. RCMP say they received an SOS signal on Monday. It said 3 hikers had fallen over Meechin Creek Falls, about 30 kilometers west of Kimberley. Officers found the bodies of 2 women, aged 35 and 68. Search crews are still looking for a 35-year-old man who is presumed dead. Mounties are investigating but do not believe the deaths are suspicious. A cult leader who calls herself the Queen of Canada is now in police custody. Romana Didulo and her followers were living in a former school in a small Saskatchewan village. The RCMP raided that building yesterday and arrested 16 adults. Jeffrey Tram has the details.
Leave the phone down. You're under arrest.
All right. Romano Didulo's arrest was captured by her phone in a live stream. Didulo was one of 16 adults taken by Saskatchewan RCMP after they received a report of a firearm. A search warrant was executed at a former school in the village of Richmond, located 365 kilometers west of Regina. Inspector Ashley St. Germain is with the RCMP.
We have located and seized 4 replica handguns, 1 inside the building and 3 inside vehicles.
The news comes as a relief for Richmond resident Vanessa Johnson.
This is the best day of my life right now. Like literally, it's so great that we have finally gotten some movement.
Didulo and her followers have been in Saskatchewan for 2 years. Her group stems from a larger QAnon movement. Christine Sarteski is an expert on cults at Chatham University.
The idea of QAnon has evolved over the years, but it's essentially people who believe that there is a group of secret people who are running the government.
Sarteski says followers of the Saskatchewan cult believe Didulo is the ultimate authority.
She is effectively the supreme ruler of all the land.
RCMP won't confirm if the 15 others taken into custody with Didulo are followers. They say the investigation is in its early stages. Jeffrey Tram, CBC News, Regina.
Guyana's incumbent president, Irfan Ali, is claiming victory in his country's general election. His People's Progressive Party won more than twice as many votes as its nearest rival. Ali's challenge now, how to turn Guyana's newfound oil riches into prosperity for its citizens. Guyana has earned about $7.5 billion since 2019, when ExxonMobil started pumping offshore oil. That makes it one of the world's fastest growing economies. But neighboring Venezuela has been attempting to lay claim to the same oil-rich Essequibo territory. The biggest film festival in Canada is celebrating a special anniversary. The 50th edition of the Toronto International Film Festival starts today. There will be glitz and glam. But as Eli Glasner reports, some are asking whether TIFF is prominent enough to keep drawing world premieres.
Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson wipes tears away at a 15-minute standing ovation. The film, The Smashing Machine. The location, the world premiere at the Venice Film Festival. Matt Bellany is the host of the Hollywood podcast, The Town.
The reality is most of the big movies are choosing to debut at Venice and Telluride. And then, if they can, they will go to Toronto.
But TIFF, with public screenings and the People's Choice Award, is still special.
It's not just European aristocrats and the media So the first time these movies will premiere for a real audience is in Toronto.
From American Beauty to American fiction, Big Buzz in Toronto can spell Oscar glory. But just how public is this People's Festival? Film critic Rachel Ho.
It's unfortunate, I think, that the prices are getting as high as they are. I think the secondary market is getting a little bit out of control as well.
Resales through Ticketmaster can climb into the hundreds. And yet after the strikes and losing a major sponsor, Ho sees a comeback for TIFF.
Kind of a redemption year for them, and I think it's perfect that it's on the 50 year.
Well, you think what you want about me. I'm not changing. I like me.
Which opens with John Candy, I Like Me, a documentary about the beloved Canadian actor produced by Canadian star Ryan Reynolds. Eli Glaster, CBC News, Toronto.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba, and welcome to the first day of school for 13 more divisions that are heading back in many of our rural areas of this province today. I'm Marcy Marcusa. As mentioned, this is Information Radio. And you are on CBC. It's your morning show, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube. This hour on the program, we will hear from Manitoba's Education Minister. What does she think about students getting expelled because a school doesn't have enough resources to cope with their behavior due to attention deficit hyperactivity disorder? CBC covered that story. We'll ask the minister. But that's only one of the things. This is a feature interview with Tracy Smith between 7:30 and 8 o'clock. She also answers your questions that you sent CBC about cell phone bans, artificial intelligence, and also violence in the classroom. So that's between 7:30 and 8 here on Information Radio. But we begin talking about, well, the weather. One of our producers saw their breath this morning. Is Mother Nature pulling the pin on summer? We hit the street to find out what you thought about that. Stay tuned. Right now, let's go to Heather with headlines.
Shoppers at the Unicity Walmart say they're not surprised by an armed robbery at that store on Tuesday, but they are surprised by the age of the suspects. 2 are just 13. Police say 4 teenagers filled backpacks with merchandise, and when a security officer tried to stop them, one suspect shot at him with an air gun, just missing his head. The MLA for Interlake Gimli hopes cooler heads prevail over whiskey. This week, Ontario Premier Doug Ford poured out a bottle of Crown Royal in protest over an announced plant closure near Windsor. Well, Derek Johnson says if Ontario is considering pulling any whiskey from its liquor stores, it should be Jack Daniel's. And of course, Crown Royal is still distilled in Gimli. We'll hear the latest in our next local news coming up at 7:30.
Thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
Rain in Winnipeg coming 5 to 10 millimeters. Right now, it's cloudy and 6. Abby?
Rush hour traffic already building in the city. Just avoid, take it easy as you proceed. That intersection at Portage and Murray, four ways are still flashing there. Anything in traffic, let us know, 788-3093.
Well, as I mentioned, Labor Day weekend, sunny, humid, and hot, but today it really does feel like fall. And then you look at the summer that we had in Manitoba. Winnipeg had our smokiest summer on record. And we wondered, for you, did summer fly by? Was it hot and sunny enough? Do you feel shortchanged, even though we're not yet officially into fall? We sent CBC's Jim Agapito to find out. He talked to some students at University of Manitoba, including Julian Simano, who worked at a summer camp.
Did the smoke prevent you from doing everything you want to do this summer?
Yes. We had many days where we were forced to keep kids inside or cancel groups that were planning to come. And when I got home after work, wanted to go outside, couldn't. I have asthma, so it really prevents me. I could have stayed home and actually did things.
My name is Chase Dubé. Not necessarily, but it affected my work a lot.
How so?
I was a manager of a swim pool, so we had to cancel outside swimming lessons, which made my day really crazy when that happened.
What happens when that happens?
Well, you can't swim when there's smoke. It's not good for you, so we have to cancel lessons and do a whole bunch of credits on account and stuff.
My name is Lucas Borger. Well, I go out to my cabin in Northwest Ontario, and so there was still some pretty bad smoke out there. So unfortunately, I spent all my weekdays inside for work, and then I ended up spending a lot of time inside on the weekends that I'd like to spend outside because of the smoke. So
My name is Mohammed Kamar. During the first part of the summer, there was a lot of smoke. Like, it was bad, like, breathing that stuff. But it's better. It's going better now. Like, it feels way better.
Did that prevent you from doing anything to smoke at the beginning of summer?
No, not at all. I was still going to the gym, working out, going outdoors, camping, hiking, stuff like that. It was really good.
So what are some of the things you wish you were able to do this summer?
I wish I could have had more of the work time, showing up to work like an hour early and then having 3 hours that I have to sit there because our group canceled. Not fun.
I wish I was able to travel more. I wasn't able to do that just because of work and stuff. And now that it's so cold, I'm not gonna go to the lake as much, but.
Just basically being outside more, being able to enjoy the nicer weather. We're on a lake too, getting out on the water. I really like doing that.
Definitely more traveling. Like more time to travel to other places. It's like, it was really short in time, that's all, you know?
Now that the season's changing, what are some of the things you'd like to do in the fall?
I am very excited. I moved out to my brother's house. I'm very excited to getting situated with them. I'm gonna start working out with my older brother. The rest of the fall is, I don't really do many things for fall time.
I'm looking forward to pumpkin carving and all things Halloween.
Really? So you're already gearing up for...
I am.
This fall, I want to do a little bit more activities around outside, maybe go to the corn maze, maybe doing a little traveling on the weekends, that kind of stuff. Now that the smoke's died down, I can get outside and get a little more done, yeah.
This fall, 100% focus on school because I really need to pass this last year, hopefully, so I can graduate, definitely. I don't want to think about anything else.
Nothing but just school.
Just school at this time.
That's the CBC's Jim Agapito speaking with students at the University of Manitoba about what they're thinking about this fall and also about whether or not they felt like, did they get everything in they wanted to this summer? Did you? 788-3205.
We carry a world of information in our pockets because we want to know. It's news you can trust, delivered when you want and where you want on Canada's News app. Now with CBC Radio 1, local and live. Download the CBC News app for free.
Well, up next on Information Radio, in August, delegates from 183 countries met for 10 days trying to reach a consensus on reducing plastic pollution. They didn't reach an agreement, but experts say it's driving a wider conversation about the risks that plastic pose to our environment, but also to our health. So before you put your lunch into that plastic container, let's hear from our medical health columnist, Dr. Raj Bhardwaj.
Good morning, Marcy.
So there are a lot of headlines about microplastics. Should we worry?
Yeah, some of them are viral, kind of these claims that microplastics and nanoplastics, are there was one about 3 years ago that claimed that we ingest a credit card's worth of microplastics every week or every year, depending on which headline you read. That has been thoroughly debunked. So I think that there's a lot of people trying to scaremonger out there. But I do think that there's a lot of legitimate scientific concern about microplastics that have come from the results of a lot of studies on both animals and humans. And this is, a problem. This microplastic problem is estimated to double by 2040 if we don't do something about it. But in general, I would say there's two big areas of concern. There's physical particles themselves getting into our bodies and gumming up the works. And then there's the potential endocrine disrupting or hormone disrupting chemicals in some plastics, things like BPA and related chemicals that are added to some plastics and have been found to act like different hormones in our bodies. So Canada was actually the first country to declare BPA a dangerous substance back in 2009, and it restricted its use in things like baby bottles. But BPA is still used in other countries. And in some cases, BPA has just been replaced by other similar chemicals, which probably have some of the same health risks. So the problem is that it's a big problem, and there's a whole bunch of things that we probably don't even know are a problem yet. And that makes it basically impossible to do the mental math, the risk versus the convenience of plastics in our lives. But I do think that it's worth taking some steps, at least take the easy steps to reduce your exposure, because all you can do is reduce, right? Like, we can't live in a world without plastics. They're literally everywhere.
So you started by debunking something, a myth about what plastics and the risk to our health. But what do we actually know about what is true, the true health risks of microplastics?
Yeah, so if you break it down into those two broad categories, right? The physical effects and the chemical effects. So in terms of the physical effects, there's a ton of studies, but let's focus on just two for now. So in one study, doctors looked at the plaque that develops inside blood vessels and increases your risk of heart attacks and strokes. So relatively small study, they took 257 people that were getting that plaque removed, and they looked at the plaque under a microscope, and they found that over half of those plaques had microplastic particles in the plaque. So that's interesting. Then, even though they removed the plaque, they followed those patients along and they said, okay, let's see what happens to them over the next 3 years. They found that people who had the highest level of microplastics in their plaque, even though the plaque was removed, had more than 4 times higher risk of heart attack, stroke, and death within 3 years. So that's one. Another study looked at the levels of microplastics in people's organs after they died, and they found that the concentrations in the brain were 7 to 30 times higher than in the liver and kidneys. So that's worrisome if they're collecting in the brain sort of more than other places. And they also found that brain concentrations of micro and nanoplastics were 2 to 10 times higher in the brains of people who had dementia compared to people who didn't have dementia. So again, ominous findings, but none of these studies can actually point to a cause-effect relationship, right? We don't know, is it whatever's allowing the person to have dementia or causing their dementia, is it also allowing more microplastics to be deposited in the brain or not cleared out of the brain? Or is it the microplastics that are, maybe part of the problem of triggering the dementia?
What about the second concern, the chemical effects of microplastics on our bodies?
Yeah, so the idea is that some chemicals in plastics, some microplastics might be able to fit into the keyholes on different cells, and those keyholes are meant to be opened by hormones like estrogen or insulin. So if those chemicals from the plastic are opening the keyholes instead, then that changes how our body is functioning. So BPA is the most well-known hormone disruptor, and there's been research looking at mice and other lab animals that showed a couple of interesting things. So these are lab animals. They're fed the same foods, have the same level of exercise, but they found that animals that had more microplastic in their body would generally be fatter than the ones who had lower levels. Same goes for lab animals that link microplastics to lower sperm count and lower quality sperm. And also lab studies that show that some stem cells, so these are cells that can grow up to become any cell in the body, any kind of cell, stem cells that are exposed to microplastics preferentially become fat cells instead of muscle cells or bone cells or something.
How do microplastics get into our bodies then?
Eating and drinking is the big one. And you got to think of, all the food and beverages that are packaged in plastic. And there's a chance that, some of that plastic sheds into the food or water that we consume. So think plastic water bottles, for example. But think of packaging. There's, takeout food containers, canned foods that actually have a thin plastic liner to prevent the metal from corroding. It's wild. If you're next time you're walking through the grocery store, just have a look around and see how much is packed in some plastic. You think, oh, cereal. Oh, but it has that little, it's a cardboard box, but it has that plasticky thing inside anyway. And that's not to mention the actual food and water inside the packaging, right? Plants and animals absorb microplastics in water, and we eat those plants and animals. We drink that water and stuff. But it's not all about eating and drinking. We can also breathe in microplastic dust. A lot of that comes from the breakdown of tires, just from cars. And then some of that comes from like nylon, polyester clothing as it breaks down, things like that. And then in terms of absorbing through your skin, luckily, plastic microbeads in cosmetics and stuff like that are banned in Canada, but not in most other countries. So if you're buying your cosmetics online from other countries, you got to be thinking about that as well.
Before you go this morning, what can we do to reduce the amount of microplastics in our bodies?
Yeah, I think reduce is the key word there. But in terms of the individual, a couple of things to think about. Plastics are more likely to leach into your food if there's heat involved. So don't heat or reheat food in plastic containers. Don't leave your plastic bottles of water in your car where they can get hot. I'm bad for that. Don't use plastic for hot beverages, and be mindful of pans with nonstick coatings and plastic utensils, things like that. And then also, think about, are you putting plastic in your dishwasher where it gets really hot? And then in terms of eating and drinking, weirdly, big source of microplastic exposure in the kitchen is from tea bags. So maybe buy loose leaf tea and use a strainer if you are drinking a lot of tea. If you're having, 1 cup of tea a year, it's probably not worth your effort.
All right, Dr. Bardwaj, thank you.
My pleasure.
Interesting findings there from Dr. Bardwaj. I know it's going to change some of my habits for sure. That is our medical columnist here on CBC Radio. On the morning show, you're with Information Radio. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thanks for being here on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. It is Thursday, September the 4th, back to school for a handful of other divisions today across the province as the return continues. It's going to be wet today. You need an umbrella in your backpack or your bag. In Winnipeg, it hasn't yet arrived. Brandon had early morning rain and now it's gone, but it's going to come back. So we've got 10 millimeters of rain, 5 to 10 in Winnipeg, and more like 10 to 20 millimeters expected out west in Brandon. We do have one traffic alert that we've been mentioning here. Portage and Moray, signals are flashing red in all direction, the traffic signals. So treat that as a four-way stop and proceed with caution as traffic continues to pick up here. All right, let's get to morning sports on CBC. Scott Reguer is with us next live. Good morning.
I have to admit, Marcy, listening to Dr. Bardwaj, I listened with one ear closed, one open, because I just finished shelving the black plastic steamer we've had, and we use every single day in the microwave. And so I heard the reports there, get rid of the black plastic. But I've been using just the clear plastic one now, thinking that's okay. And then I just heard the doctor. And what am I going to steam? I guess back to a pot.
I know. And as he mentioned, it's so hard that reduce is the optimal word. For me, though, plastic in the dishwasher, plastic in the microwave, I'm guilty of a lot of those things, right?
Yeah.
All right. Lessons learned. Sports. Let's start with tennis, where Canadians keep on rolling at the U.S. Open, eh?
They really do, including Gabby Dabrowski, Marcy. The Ottawa native, along with her partner Aaron Routliffe, have won a spot in tomorrow's doubles final. A victory there would be Dabrowski's second Grand Slam triumph in women's doubles. She's also won a couple of majors in the mixed version of the event. Meantime, Montreal's Felix Auger-Aliassime through to the semifinals in men's singles. He upset Australia's Alex de Minaur yesterday in a 4-hour-long match that was riddled with unforced errors. It may not have been pretty on the eye, but Auger-Aliassime says he'll take it.
Even down a break in a second, I was like, okay, let's just believe, keep going for it, keep having the same intentions. Players that win Grand Slams at 7 matches, there's going to be 1, 2, maybe 3 of them that are going to be a struggle. Today, both Alex and I think struggled big time at moments, but it was about having that belief that it will come, and when the moment is, under pressure, that you will respond well.
Felix says he's following the advice of Rafa Nadal, who once told him the difference between being a good and a great player is finding a way to win when you're not at your best. That will not be an option tomorrow for Felix in the semifinals because he's up against Jannik Sinner, the best in the business. The Italians only lost 1 set so far in New York, although it was to a Canadian, Denis Shapovalov. So we'll see.
Now, let's go to baseball. Once again, this was a matter of how you finish and not how you start for the Blue Jays.
Right. So the Jays fell behind early in Cincinnati last night with Shane Bieber, uncharacteristically, Marcy, losing his control. Bieber gave up 5 runs to the Reds in the second inning alone. Fortunately, the former Cy Young Award winner regained his command and Toronto came back to win. Here's manager John Schneider.
Probably the best 5-run outing I've seen in a while from a starting pitcher, to be honest with you. And we needed it. In the second inning, you're looking up and you're trying to piece it together with a labored bullpen, if you will, with an overworked bullpen. But for him to go 6, that's what good pitchers do, man. They stay focused and they kind of just keep grinding. Really needed it. That was a really good outing.
Blue Jays bats played a part as well last night, Marcy. 5 home runs, tying a season high. But here's the stat that really stands out for me. Last night's was the 42nd comeback win of Toronto's season. In fact, the Jays have won most of their games that way after trailing. It's a testament to their resilience, something I'm sure Rafa Nadal would appreciate.
It's cool, but it's so stressful for the fans.
Very stressful, I agree. And it's just going to get more and more so.
They're not thinking about us.
Oh, I know they're not. Yeah.
Let's finish with a developing story in basketball this morning, Scott.
Yeah, so this involves a certain Kawhi Leonard. Raptors fans remember him as the guy who led their team to the NBA championship in 2019 before he headed to Los Angeles to play for the Clippers. He was joined by another superstar, Paul George, at the time, and LA owner Steve Ballmer could barely contain himself introducing the pair to Clippers fans.
I'm pumped to say hello as Clippers to Paul and Kawhi. Come on! Come on!
Seems Steve Ballmer, Marcy, may have been providing Kawhi with more than just infectious encouragement over the years. The Athletic is reporting the owner set up a phony endorsement deal to get Kawhi to re-sign with the franchise in 2021. It allegedly paid Kawhi $28 million through a sponsor called Aspiration, a possibly fraudulent tree planting company. The Athletic points out that Ballmer pumped around $50 million into Aspiration just before Kawhi signed his endorsement deal. The Clippers deny any wrongdoing, while the NBA says it's now looking into these reports. To think he could have just stayed in Toronto, Marcy, and Kawined and dined the years away instead.
Nicely put. All right, thank you very much, Scott. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Sounds good.
That is Scott Regier, who joins us every morning here on Information Radio with Sports. The Education Minister answers your questions right after your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, it is a chilly 6 degrees. Expect rain today, 5 to 10 millimeters. Not as much as they're going to get in Western Manitoba, but still, we'll have some. And that high today of 10 is so much cooler than what is seasonal. The normal high is 21. Students in Sage Creek are heading to school this morning. A new school that will have a new name. CBC reporter Megan Ketchison is out in Sage Creek this morning and joins us live. Megan?
Well, it even smells new in this school. This is called Sage Creek Bonavista, and 813 students are going to be filtering in here to the French immersion K-8 school that has been wished for by parents for a long time. There's still boxes in the hallway. Now, one of the things with this school is that right now it is called Ecole Sage Creek Bonavista, but that name is going to change later on this year. I was speaking with Principal Cameron Johnson.
One of the suggestions that came back really strongly was the Honourable Justice Marie St. Clair, and so that will be the inspiration for the name. Now, he passed away last year, and so in following with protocols, we don't use his name for the year until the year after his passing. So the name of the school will be inspired by him.
And so that will take place, again, a formal naming of the school with ceremonies will take place in November. But for this morning, they are going to be having students and staff filtering in to start the new school year in a brand new school. Reporting live, Megan Ketchison, CBC News.
Thanks so much, Megan. Well, shoppers at the Unicity Walmart say they're not surprised by an armed robbery at that store this week, but they are surprised by the age of the suspects. 2 are just 13. Police say 4 teens filled backpacks with merchandise, and when a security officer tried to stop them, one suspect shot at him with an air gun, just missing his head. Chris Hames has lived in the area for years.
That's pretty alarming. For anybody, but for that age to be at that point in their life where that's what it's come to is it's pretty shocking, pretty sad.
Police say cases like this are part of organized crime where teens are instructed by others to steal from stores. After opposition from area residents, the Premier says his government will look for a new location for a proposed supervised consumption site. Last November, the province and Aboriginal Health and Wellness Centre submitted a licensing request with Health Canada for a site at 200 Disraeli Freeway. Well, that idea quickly came up against resistance from people in the area who say the location was too close to schools, a childcare centre, and some homes. Yesterday, the Premier says the province will bring forward a new location for people to consider. Wab Canoe says too many Manitobans are dying from overdose, and this is one way to improve things. Some Winnipeggers, including nurses, are sounding the alarm over rising ER wait times this week. This despite the Manitoba government launching a team in May tasked with cutting wait times in ERs. Manitoba Nurses Union President Darlene Jackson says in Winnipeg, nurses have seen ER wait times continue to rise over the last 2 months.
We're hearing that from nurses that wait times are longer, that there seems to be more bottlenecking in our ERs and our urgent cares. We are not moving in the right direction, and that is certainly what staff are saying.
Some patients outside the Health Sciences Centre yesterday tell CBC they saw people waiting upwards of 20 hours for care on Tuesday. In an email, the WRHA says there's often a temporary surge in volume in emergency rooms following a long weekend. A private university is calling on the province to give it more spots to enroll students from other countries. Providence University College says it's seen a 90% cut to international student admissions. As a result, it says it's been forced to sell property and cut courses because of a drop in tuition revenue. The Manitoba government is prioritizing public universities and colleges in its limited number of international student spots handed down from the federal government. But Providence Provost Nicholas Greco says the big schools aren't using all their spots.
We can fill those spots. We also have recruiters that we're working closely with in other places to get those students.
The province says it prioritizes public schools and labor market needs. The head of a prominent American think tank is speaking today to federal cabinet. Prime Minister Mark Carney is holding a 2-day cabinet retreat in Toronto, and the ministers will be hearing from Kevin Roberts. He's the mastermind behind Project 2025, the controversial conservative blueprint proposing a drastic overhaul of the U.S. government. He's been invited to discuss trade issues. The MLA for Interlake Gimli hopes cooler heads prevail over whiskey. On Tuesday, Ontario Premier Doug Ford poured out a bottle of Crown Royal in protest over an announced plant closure. Multinational distiller Diageo will close bottling operations near Windsor, but it's still making whiskey at its other locations, including in Gimli. Derek Johnson has a message for Premier Ford.
I suppose if Doug Ford wants to continue pouring out Crown Royal, we'll keep producing it right here in the Interlake. I kind of think that there's a lot of people that would like to put the glass underneath the bottle and capture and enjoy some of that Canadian-made alcohol. But I do understand his frustration.
Johnson says the provinces should focus on strategies to counter U.S. tariffs. He says if Ontario is considering pulling any whiskey from its liquor stores, it should be Jack Daniels. You can find the latest news updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
Well, we are watching the sky this morning, and we're watching a system move into the province and waiting for it to get to Winnipeg here. It was raining in Brandon earlier. It's bringing rain. Now it's just cloudy, but it's going to return there. And in Winnipeg right now, no rain yet. But Dauphin, you have rain. Flin Flon has rain right now. So here is what is coming. In Winnipeg, mainly cloudy, 5 to 10 millimeters, a high of 10 degrees for the city today. Tonight, low down to 6, really windy. Tomorrow, high of 15. And then Saturday, 16. Sunday for the Teddy Bears picnic, by the way. Remember, it's in the fall now. It's happening Sunday in the Assiniboine Park. Going to be lovely. Sunny and a high of 19. That's great for the weather for that. So that's what's happening. Right now, it's mostly cloudy and 6. Brandon, cloudy and 7 degrees. You're expecting 10 to 20 millimeters of rain today. In Thompson, mostly cloudy right now and 4. And you will be a sun and cloud today and a high of 13 degrees. And that's your regional forecast from CBC. Let's have a look at our morning commute now with Abby Adiami.
Yeah, Marcia, I just looked outside, traffic picking up across the city, just a regular rush hour this time of the day. No major incidents. However, just be prepared for some delays in the key areas across the city. We still have the traffic lights signals still flashing red in all directions along Portage and Murray. If you see change, let us know. But please, if you're approaching that intersection, treat it as a 4-way stop for now and proceed with caution. Still back to school, drivers, cyclists, e-bike riders, remember 30K, 7 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. Mondays to Friday. The police will be monitoring. You don't want to get a ticket. We have lane closures near Broadway, lane reduced to 1 lane around the Pembina axis. The short ramp closure for today, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. at southbound and eastbound Abunajimikina. And of course, where we have construction and road repairs in the Osborne Village, also expect delays there. But if you see anything in traffic, let us know. 788-3093.
Well, we asked you for the first week back at school to send us questions for Manitoba's Minister of Education. And now Minister Tracy Schmidt is here via Zoom to tackle them. Thank you so much for giving us the time.
Thank you, Marcy. It's such a pleasure to be here on such an exciting day.
So speaking of which, I just have to say, you have 3 kids that went back. How's your busy household?
Yeah, very busy and exciting time in our house this morning. And so I know that there's families and parents and kids and educators all over the province that are feeling the same sort of excitement and anxiety about this morning. And I'm just really wishing everyone the very best first week back at school.
All right, if we may, let's get right into the questions. A lot of them came in. We'll get through as many as we can. So Melanie Zarillo wrote into CBC and said, please remove the strict catchment rules and allow schools of choice within reason, she writes. That's her language. What's your response to that? Catchment can go both ways. It can be frustrating for people. Gordon Bell was on CBC this week talking about how they felt that reinforcements benefited their enrollment. So what's your response to the idea of removing the catchment rules? And how do you balance all these perspectives on this issue?
Yeah, we as a government very much value and appreciate and respect our partners at the school division level, right? We know that school divisions and schools across the province have done a lot of work at introducing unique and dynamic programming at the school level. And we know that attracts students from, outside of the catchment area, sometimes outside of the division. And so those are certainly, tough decisions for school divisions and administrators and trustees to make. And we are doing all that we can to support them. As a government, we have increased school funding 2 years in a row, big investments so that schools and school divisions can hire the teachers and the educators that they need to make sure that they have the capacity to meet the needs of their local community and perhaps beyond in a school of choice situation.
Where it is frustrating for folks, Minister, would you ever consider removing the catchment rules? Why do you see them? And if not, why do you see them as important?
Well, again, these are very important decisions that are made at the school division level, and school divisions and local communities are best situated to know how to meet the needs of their local communities. So we trust school divisions to be able to make those choices. We're happy to work with them. And again, as a government, to be able to provide the support and the funding necessary for schools and school communities to meet the needs of their communities.
We had a number of educators on another topic right into us all year long, but upon hearing you'd be joining us, they wrote to us about violence in the classroom. So I want to share a question that represents that. So one teacher did write to us asking what supports are being offered to students who struggle in our education system and act out violently, and how can you better protect teachers?
Yeah, I mean, this is a very important topic. And I just want to say that, the health and safety of not only students, but also educators and everyone that works in our school system is of utmost importance to me. Workplace health and safety is something that I have been an advocate for and have worked on in my career previous to being minister. And it's something that I think is very important. We are here to listen and support teachers in all the ways that we can. We have, like I said, increased school funding to be able to allow schools to hire more educators to be in the classroom. We know that kids benefit from more one-on-one time with their teachers. And so last year alone, across the province, we added more than 630 new educator positions into our schools to help support those students. Another great investment that our government has made is the $30 million annual universal nutrition program. We know what that does to support kids that are showing up to school that are facing different barriers to their learning and to their well-being. We've also seen great leadership from our premier. encouraging schools and school divisions to consider positions like school resource officers, if that is something that would meet the need in their community. So we are a listening government. We are here to support teachers in their work, and we want to make sure that every teacher and every student and every educator feels healthy and safe and supported in our schools in Manitoba.
I wonder how you mentioned, additional resource teachers being part of the direction, but still at the decisions left at the school level to do that. We heard 2 stories this year about students with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder acting out due to their challenges. They were expelled due to a lack of resources and their needs. Another parent said her child's classroom time was cut to 2 hours a day because of behavior issues stemming from intellectual disability. So students are being sent home. They're missing out on school. How concerned are you about that, given the message it sends to these kids that they're either unteachable, when really what we really might have is, as described at least from people writing into us, a resource challenge? Like how many resource teachers would you like to see added to the system? Would your government be so bold as to put a number on that to look at this as a high priority?
Well, the first thing I will say, Marcy, is that it is really our goal. There's a sign right outside of my door in my office that guides us in the principle that the goal is to have every student in classroom all day, every day. Every student in Manitoba has a right to an education and has a right to an inclusive education. We also know, though, that inclusion means different things for different kids. And so we know that schools are being asked to do a lot. We know that teachers and educators and support workers are being asked to do a lot. And we are, as a government, showing up to support them with the resources that we need. We've also made recent updates to our school code of conduct policy that really focuses on reducing those type of exclusionary practices that you're talking about wherever possible and being able to support students in the classroom. We know that teachers and educators need the resources to do that, and we are doing our best with our funding model to be able to support that very important work. We know that there is more work to do, and we know that we have a lot of catching up to do when it comes to inclusion support in classrooms.
You mentioned, something that, the people will know about this province, that there was a lot of hard work done not to separate kids, who need some additional assistance for learning. That segregation was obviously, replaced by inclusion. I guess my question is whether or not we can sustain it in Manitoba. Because when you start having kids going home, they're losing half of a year, being sent home while they're waiting for resources. So what's your thought on sustainability right now?
Yeah, like I said, Marcy, we have our government has updated our school code of conduct policy to reduce the use of those exclusionary practices whenever and at all possible. We are working with partners like the St. Amant Center to, constantly evaluate and discuss what inclusion means in Manitoba and how sustainable the model we have right now is. So we very much look forward to continuing those discussions with, like I said, partners like the St. Amant Center, with partners like the Manitoba Teachers Society and the School Boards Association, the superintendents, to make sure that we're striking that right balance.
I want to ask about artificial intelligence and its use in the classroom. It's kind of patchwork right now, teachers, it's school to school. What are your government's plans for a standardized policy? We had a lot of teachers asking about this one as well.
Yeah, this is a very active and ongoing dialogue that we're having, in government, but really across society and certainly in the classrooms. I think when we're talking about AI and the impacts of AI, one of the first things I certainly think about as minister and as a mom is what that means for our students. So we know that school divisions and schools are working, internally to develop their own policies. And as government, we are also working to support them with some guidance. When I think about AI, I think about two things primarily. I think about the safety and security of our kids in classrooms and ensuring that we are providing them with the digital literacy education that they need to be safe and responsible users of any sort of digital technology. But I also think about the great opportunity that might exist in applying AI in the classroom. Of course, we have to do that carefully. I don't know if anyone follows the Premier on social media, but just yesterday, the Premier welcomed kids back to school in Manitoba, and he also sought your opinions. So if you have an opinion about AI in the classroom, I would encourage you to check out Premier Canoe's Instagram and leave a comment. Our government is actively seeking your advice. We also have plans to bring the sector together shortly and ask directly from our stakeholders, ask from parents, ask kids, ask teachers, and ask school administrators, what are we talking about when we're talking about the future of education, and how does AI apply to that?
So in our last 3 minutes, I put a timer on here from when we started, so I know you were very busy. With all that information you're taking, will you be looking at a province-wide policy? Yes or no? Like, is that the intention at least?
Again, we know that schools are already doing this work. We are going to absolutely work with our sector to make sure that they have the guidance that they need from our government.
So at this point, no, but maybe in the future, depending on what you hear.
It's an active dialogue every single day in our department and between myself and the Premier. Absolutely.
I respect that answer. Thank you. I want to ask you a quick snapper about the cell phone ban. How did you gauge success? K-8 cell phone ban, and then in high schools, not in classrooms. And would you call it a success after year one? I think it's year two, maybe.
An overwhelming success, Marcy. One of my favorite parts of being a member of the Legislative Assembly is getting to go and visit schools during I Love to Read month. So I did a lot of that in February. And one of the first things I asked the kids, the first thing I asked them was about the Universal Nutrition Program, and the kids absolutely love it. The next question I asked them was about the cell phone ban. And surprisingly, the kids absolutely love it. Administrators love it. Teachers love it. If I can share a very quick story, I know we have only a few minutes.
I want to get to one more topic after this, if that's okay.
Sure. Okay. On Monday, it was Labor Day. I had the distinct privilege of getting to sit in the dunk tank at the Labor Day event at Memorial Park, and there was a lineup of children that wanted to dunk the education minister. So I was trying to rile them up a bit, and I was threatening them with homework, and I was trying to encourage them to, dunk me in the tank. And so I thought maybe I'd rile them up by mentioning the cell phone ban. So I said, "Hey kids, what do you think about the cell phone ban?" And you might anticipate you might get some boos or some jeers. Marcy, I am not joking. I got a round of applause. From the kids and from the parents.
We actually had students from Gordon Bell on yesterday that were saying the same thing, that they really sort of didn't mind the ban, which leads me to ask if you have plans to expand it to high school, or will you leave it this year at least alone for the rules you have in place?
What we're hearing right now is that I think we have struck the right balance. We're not hearing a lot of demand for change from the policy right now, from the sector, from students, or from teachers. That being said, again, we're a listening government. It's an ongoing dialogue, and we'll do what works for teachers and kids.
Last question is Michaela Kilbride. She wrote to us and she says, this is a question that reflects a concern many Manitoba educators share. In our province, homeroom teachers can be tasked to teach French without any formal qualifications in the language. It raises the concern about the quality of French education available to Manitoba students, as well as pressure it places on teachers who haven't been trained in the subject. My question for the minister is, why does Manitoba not require qualified French teachers in the classrooms? And why does the responsibility fall on the shoulders of homeroom teachers who know zero French yet are asked to teach and address it? And are there steps that can be taken to fix this? Now, just for context here, I know we have a shortage of French educators. This is not about French immersion educators. But what steps can you take to improve this to Michaela's question?
I am so proud to be a Manitoban and to live in a province that has this incredible, rich cultural and linguistic history that we have here in Manitoba, with so many French language speakers and francophones here in Manitoba. Manitobans right now have a government that values French language services. We have a government and a caucus full of francophonies. We have negotiated a very successful French language service agreement, most recently with the federal government, thanks to Minister Glenn Simard. And we have a very comprehensive recruitment and retention strategy for French language teachers here in the province. We are working with our partners at US Bay. We are working with our partners at DSFM. them. As you said, this is not just about French language or French immersion. This is about French in all classrooms. Our government absolutely values the French language. We value our Francophonie partners, and we are making those critical investments to make sure that we have more French and French immersion teachers in Manitoba going forward. I myself was a student of French immersion and have seen the value of a French language education, and we're making those investments to make sure that more students in Manitoba have a successful experience.
Just last briefly, though, because I'm not sure you addressed her question, because she wants to know homeroom teachers who already don't have French and they're being asked to teach French. She's wondering whether you should have a minimum standard to have them at least trained in some French proficiency, that there should be a requirement there. Because in the meantime, that's what's happening before we can train everybody up to come have more French speakers in the system.
Yeah, you know what, Marcy, we're playing catch up. After 7.5 years of a government that failed to invest in schools, that failed to prioritize French language services in this province, Manitobans now have a government that values education, values investing in French language, and is going to show up to make sure that our teachers have the resources that they need to deliver, quality programming in French, in English, and going forward in Indigenous language, which is something that our government has introduced as a brand new immersion program that we're working on here in Manitoba.
That is Manitoba's Education Minister Tracy Schmidt. I spoke with her yesterday after the show via Zoom. What do you think about what you heard? 788-3205. We tried to get through as many topics as we could. I know a number of you wrote to us. It will not be the last time we have to put questions to the minister or to the premier, in fact, on education in the province. But we'd love to hear your responses. 788-3205. In addition, in that interview, I was talking about the cell phone ban. Of course, the cell phone ban has been in place for a year, and now we're entering the second year here in Manitoba.
School's back, and so is the CBC Music Class Challenge, celebrating its 10th anniversary. Powered by Music Counts. Music educators across the country pick a song from our list, create a cover version, and upload a video of your class performing the cover. Amazing prizes are up for grabs, including $30,000 worth of new musical instruments. Check out all the details and register now at cbc.ca/musicclass.
We posted on Facebook, it's back to school and I'm blank, as back to school continues today. 13 more divisions heading back. Excited for the year, Lyle Wood wrote in. Megan Morgan said relieved. We had people writing in excited and nervous. Claire Edgar Sutton said retired teacher for 6 years, but I still feel at this time of year like, shouldn't I be doing something right now? And Deeth Aquino Adnoel saying unprepared, and Brian Jameson saying sad. I kind of miss the grandkids running about and making me younger. So all kinds of different emotions. One of the things that has picked up is traffic, and that's not just back to school traffic, but it's back to work traffic. And so there's a few delays out there to note this morning, Abby.
Yeah, Sean called and said expect delays around Disraeli and Logan due to partial lane closures, street construction happening there. You can hear the phone ringing, and it's impacting both right-hand lanes, and it's causing this delay all the way down to Princess. So expect delays in that part of the city.
Okay, you go get the phone. I'll read the rest of the list. So Abby's going to get the phone, and we'll get this on air if it's something that's urgent and we need to pass along right now. But he started talking about that delay. Here are some of the other delays that we have some problems with. We have Portage and Moray, where the traffic signals are flashing red in all directions. So treat that as a four-way stop. And he was talking about the partial closures, Disraeli, Logan, and again, traffic backed up to Princess Street. The impact really is those right-hand lanes, as Abby was outlining there. So it's just busier out there, quite honestly. We're back into fall, getting used to being all out on the roadways. Even last night, I noticed I was out and about for Burger Week, and it was just packed with folks, but cold too, a little bit cooler. So a lot of people probably staying in their cars with those heaters on, and Burger Week couldn't have asked for better weather, right? Warming up. Let's get into what's happening in news headlines to more serious matters. Heather Wells joins us now with that update. Good morning.
Good morning. Yes, students heading back to school all week long. And today in Sage Creek, students are heading into a new school building that soon will have a new name. That name is in honor of a former Manitoba Justice, Murray Sinclair. And that name will be given in an honoring ceremony coming up in November. So students have 1 month under the name Sage Creek Bonavista. And then by November, their school is going to have a new name. So we'll hear more about that as CBC's Megan Ketchison is in Sage Creek this morning. And the MLA for Interlake Gimli hopes cooler heads prevail over whiskey. We'll hear what happened in Ontario and Manitoba's response to it, or at least the Manitoba MLA's response to it, coming up in our next local news at 8:30.
All right, thanks, Heather.
Thanks.
Well, we're waiting for rain in Winnipeg. We are expecting this to happen, 5 to 10 millimeters. It's 6 degrees and cloudy right now. We already see rain in the Paw, up in Flin Flon. Also, Brandon had early morning rain as well, and you're expecting more. Abby covered traffic just now, but if you do have something else to add, by the way, that call, nothing urgent, 788-3093. Well, speaking of back to school, after 8 o'clock on the program, he spent his summer jumping from temporary shelter to temporary shelter in Winnipeg. But now this student's back home in the remote community of Garden Hill First Nation and preparing to start grade 11 next week. And that's because of wildfires and changes. There's still delays in some divisions. He'll join us after 8 to tell us what it's like to be a student in one of the impacted areas due to wildfires and what back to school looks like in the north for him. Also, in the next half hour of Information Radio, we are going to be hearing a little bit more about a story we first brought you yesterday. 2 patients will respond with their experiences at HSC's ER, where wait times exceed 20 hours for some patients this week. Those were the numbers, and we had that survey out yesterday. So we'll hear from some of those patients coming up after 8.
Today on Q with Tom Power. The legendary Billy Idol is back with his 9th studio album. And on it, he looks back on his life and career chronologically. Songs documenting his early days, his massive breakthrough, his drug addiction, and finally, his rebirth. He'll be here to tell you about it all. That's coming up on Q, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
Today, we launch a new series looking at the state of education in this country. Canada is lagging behind other G7 countries, and experts say our curriculum needs to adapt to a changing world. Our new series, Learning Curve, coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. The Trump administration is taking the fight over tariffs to the Supreme Court. It filed an appeal late last night asking the U.S. top court to reverse a lower court decision. It said most of President Donald Trump's tariffs were illegal. The CBC's Aaron Collins is in Washington this morning. And Aaron, what is the Trump administration arguing here?
Right. So just a quick reminder, this is all a reaction to a ruling that says Trump's sweeping tariffs are, well, illegal. Just to rewind a bit, the president justified imposing these sweeping tariffs using something called the International Powers Act. It's a mouthful. The court said that was illegal, and in theory, that could be a very pricey problem for the U.S., which could be forced to pay back all of the cash collected so far. So what's happening now? And no real surprise here, Donald Trump is challenging that ruling in the Supreme Court, saying that striking down his tariffs would be devastating to the U.S. economy. And he says it would actually be bad for his attempts to stop conflicts in Europe and the Middle East, too.
The tariffs are vital to the success of this country. When I say I ended 7 wars, at least half of those wars were ended because of the power of tariffs.
All right. So Trump arguing his tariffs are essential not just to the U.S. economy, but to the country's foreign policy as well. Of course, the big question for Canadians is, what does this mean for their trade dispute with the U.S.? And the answer there, it's not as much as you might hope. Most of Canada's exports to the U.S. are still covered under CUSMA. That's the Canada-U.S.-Mexico trade agreement. Something north of 80% are still tariff-free. Now, the areas of the Canadian economy that are really being hit hard are the steel and aluminum sectors, which aren't covered here and were imposed using a different law. So no matter what happens with this challenge, those tariffs are going to stick around.
Thanks so much, Aaron.
You bet.
The CBC's Aaron Collins in Washington. Canada's trade and security relationship with the United States is a key topic today in Toronto. Prime Minister Mark Carney is holding a planning session with his cabinet. His government has promised a budget this fall. Finance Minister François-Philippe Champagne says it will be difficult to balance ambition with austerity.
When you have your largest trading partner turning its back, when you have trading relationships which are evolving, we're in the middle of a trade war. Obviously, this is a moment where Canadians are saying, deal with the short term, reduce your spending, but at the same time, make sure that you invest in assets that will provide prosperity.
Cabinet was going to hear from Kevin Roberts today. He's the head of a prominent conservative think tank and one of the authors of Project 2025. That policy blueprint proposed a drastic overhaul of the U.S. government. The Prime Minister's office now says Roberts' office has indicated he can no longer take part in today's discussions. We are getting a better understanding of how the U.S. trade war is affecting this country. Statistics Canada has just released its latest international trade numbers. Despite the Trump administration's tariffs, exports to the U.S. actually rose for a third straight month. CBC's senior business correspondent Peter Armstrong has more.
Every time we get a batch of data like this, the biggest question on everyone's mind is how the economy is weathering the storm of tariffs from the United States. And the answer here in these numbers today is, once again, that the Canadian economy is showing some remarkable resiliency. Total exports are up. This is the third consecutive monthly increase we've seen. And if you scale out over the year, through the first 7 months of 2025, exports are up 1% compared to last year. Now, month-to-month exports to the United States, those were up 5% in July, largely driven by crude oil and passenger cars. But over that same 7-month period to start the year, U.S. total exports through that period are down 2.9%. Now, it's safe to say the reason it's been so resilient is largely due to those vast exemptions for CUSMA-compliant products. 90% of what Canadians sell to the U.S. is tariff-free, at least for now. And that is why those U.S.-Canada negotiations are so important. Peter Armstrong, CBC News, Toronto.
Officials in Portugal say a Canadian is among those injured in a Lisbon funicular crash. 17 people have died. 21 others were injured when the streetcar derailed and crashed into a building yesterday. This woman lives in Lisbon and calls the incident a tragedy. One, she says, is not good for the city's image. The yellow and white Gloria streetcar is a popular attraction. Officials say people from Germany, Spain, and Morocco were also among those hurt. Portugal is calling today a national day of mourning. Security guarantees for Ukraine are the focus of today's meeting of the Coalition of the Willing. France is hosting leaders from the 30 countries in the informal alliance. They're being joined by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. A big question is whether the coalition will deploy troops to Ukraine if there is a ceasefire. Russia has already warned it will not accept foreign troops in Ukraine under any circumstances. But NATO's Secretary General Mark Rutte says that doesn't matter.
Why are we interested in what Russia thinks about troops in Ukraine? Russia has nothing to do with this. Ukraine is a sovereign nation. If Ukraine wants to have security guarantee forces in Ukraine to support the peace deal, it's up to them. Nobody else can decide about it. And I think we really have to stop making Putin too powerful.
Yesterday, Vladimir Putin said he is willing to keep fighting to achieve all Russian objectives if Ukraine does not agree to a deal. Water bombers are being built in Canada again after a decade-long hiatus. 2025 has been another intense wildfire season, and demand for the aircraft is soaring around the world. The CBC's Josh McLean has more.
On a factory floor near Calgary, a work in progress. The skeleton of a DHC-515, the latest incarnation of the aerial tanker popularly known as the Super Scooper.
It's really exciting for us to be bringing the aircraft back into production.
Neil Sweeney is with de Havilland Aircraft of Canada. De Havilland acquired the design after Bombardier stopped making the plane back in 2015. After years of planning, production of an updated version began in October.
We anticipate there's a market between 250 and 350 aircraft of this size. And we're getting right at it to build them.
A hot commodity on a warming planet where the threat of wildfires is growing. European countries ordered the first 22 planes, meaning Canadian provinces who ordered late will have to wait.
We need those bombers today.
Mike Flanagan is a wildfire researcher in British Columbia.
Water bombers can buy you time, especially when the conditions are extreme like we've been seeing, hot, dry, and windy. They buy you that time to get a handle on the fire. So that's the best use, and we have a shortage.
Manitoba and Ontario have both announced plans to buy the new aircraft. The first planes are slated to come off the line in 2028. Josh McLean, CBC News, Calgary.
We have two closely watched elections to tell you about this morning, one in South America, the other in the Caribbean. My World Report co-host John Northcott is following all of it for us this morning. John, let's begin with Guyana.
Marcia, Guyana has been an independent country for almost 60 years, but it's the last few years that have proved so consequential in its history. One of the poorest countries in the region. About 10 years ago, huge crude oil reserves were identified there. They were so big that Guyana now has the largest oil reserves per capita in the world, growing Guyana's national revenues by almost 5 times. The task of managing that huge windfall for his people will fall to the newly re-elected president of Guyana, Irfan Ali. He has the huge responsibility of making sure those oil resources benefit the 800,000 people who live in the country. Complicating the situation, Guyana's neighbor, the also oil-rich but volatile Venezuela. Just before the vote, in fact, a boat carrying elections officials and ballots was shot at from territory rich in resources that is claimed by both countries.
And to the north, another incumbent claims victory. In Jamaica, Andrew Holness has won a third term. Tell us more.
Marcia, the Jamaican Prime Minister won in what was a tight race. The issues the country faces are long-standing, crime and the economy. But Andrew Holness promised to double the minimum wage and to introduce income tax reforms. He also ran on his record. He pointed to, in particular, his war on crime, with killings down in some areas by as much as 70%. But some of his tactics, such as imposing states of emergency, have been criticized as heavy-handed, with advocates calling for a balance between security and civil rights. Marcia, two parts of the world whose leaders have fresh mandates and some long-standing challenges.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
My World Report co-host John Northcott with me in studio. And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. If you like the World Report podcast, please follow us and tell a friend. It helps spread the word. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio on CBC. We're live downtown in our studios at 89.3 FM, 990 AM on that app and YouTube. September the 4th, school day number 3. And divisions continue to open to students today. 13 more divisions, mostly in rural Manitoba, are heading back. Well, speaking of students, he spent his summer jumping from temporary shelter to temporary shelter here in Winnipeg. Now he's back home in the community of Garden Hill First Nation and getting ready to start grade 11. We're going to get a student's perspective from the north this half hour on the program. Also, Garden Hill is supposed to be getting a new school. So with no timeline on that, what's that like for students who continue to go to school in a structure that needs repairs? So stay tuned. We're going to hear more about it. Also this half hour on Information Radio, we are going to be hearing what happened when one of our reporters, Rosanna Hempel, spent some time outside HSC yesterday. She found herself speaking to 2 patients about their experiences at HSC's ER, where wait times this week at some points exceeded 20 hours for some patients. So we'll have that for you this half hour as well. Right now, Heather Wells is in with other stories and updates. Good morning again, Heather.
Good morning. Well, a private Manitoba university says it was forced to sell land and cut courses because it's not being given enough spots from the province for international students. Providence University College says last year it had about 1,000 new international students before the federal government implemented that 2-year cap on students from other countries. And this year, it's received only 90 spots from the province. So more on that. And shoppers at the Unicity Walmart say they are not surprised by an armed robbery at that store this week, but they are surprised by the age of the suspects, 2 who are just 13 years old. More stories from Manitoba coming up at 8:30.
All right, thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
Well, that light rain started again in Brandon, and it is moving this way. So there's also light rain in Dauphin this morning, and then there's light rain in Portage, so it's getting closer to Winnipeg here. The Paw has light rain also. So this system is moving in. It's affecting, as you can hear, parts of the north, but most of southern Manitoba. In Brandon, in total today, 10 to 20 millimeters of rain expected. In Winnipeg today, we're expecting 5 to 10 millimeters, and that's going to start for us this morning and continue through the day. Our highest is just 10 degrees. We're still well below normal for this time of year. Right now it is mostly cloudy and it is 7 degrees, and we should warm up through the weekend and clear out in time for the Teddy picnic at Assiniboine Park. On Sunday, it's looking like it's going to be sunny and 19, if that's one of the things you have planned for this weekend. Or maybe you're going to the Banjo Bowl, right? That's on Saturday here in Winnipeg. So Saturday, not bad either, not wet at least. Mix of sun and cloud and a high of 16, which, Abby, I think is pretty good football weather, right?
Yeah, true football weather for this weekend, I would say.
Yeah, not bad. How's the commute?
Well, rush hour traffic picking up, and we already having some incidents on the road. We're reporting a multi-vehicle collision. It's been reported eastbound Abenoji-Mikina. Abraham called, Lauren called for the same thing. This is just near the merging lane to Pemina. Vehicle parts are scattered on the road, so you need to approach with caution. Also at Portage and Murray, light signals. We've not gotten any updates yet. Still flashing red in all directions. Treat as a four-way stop and proceed. Just go carefully. And of course, for the construction, we're expecting delays at Disraeli and the Logan intersection. Traffic backed up all the way to Princess. So due to this partial lane closure on both sides, you need to try to take it easy as you approach that axis. We're seeing lane closures around Broadway, and also not to forget the maintenance work going on around Dugald, around Archibald, Aberdeen, the Disraeli Bridge. We see construction happening in those areas, so you need to approach with caution and, just add some extra time for your commute this morning. Also, not to forget, school is back in session, so remember the school zones 30K, 7 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. Mondays to Friday. The police will be monitoring. You don't want to get a ticket. You see anything in traffic, let us know. 788-3093.
So where is school back in session? Well, in a lot of the rural divisions. So here they are: Hanover, Interlake, Lord Selkirk, Mystery Lake, Manitoba Institute of Trades and Tech's back today, Pine Creek, Prairie Rose, Red River Valley, Rolling River, Seine River, Turtle River, and the White Shell. Now, school is not yet back for my next guest, and he is in one of the areas that had a really tough summer. Joshua McPherson is 16 years old and spent about a month evacuated from his home community of Garden Hill First Nation. It's a fly-in community about 475 kilometers northeast of Winnipeg. Now he is back home. He's in Garden Hill. He's preparing to start grade 11, and he's given us some time this morning via Zoom. Good morning.
Hi, good morning.
Nice to see you.
Yeah, nice to see you too.
So when are you starting school, Joshua?
I'm starting school next week. High school registrations are open on the 8th and 9th, and my first day back is actually on the 10th.
What was it like for you this summer? I know that on socials, because you and I are connected there, you were posting, the sky started to change. It was getting scary at points. What was it like with the fire activity and the smoke?
It was pretty challenging in the community. I noticed that when I was going to work, many of the people have already been evacuated, so the entire store was just empty basically. And then come time for all of us to be actually evacuated, I remember just being on the barge on my way to the airport. I look behind me and I just see smoke in the air. There's nothing but smoke.
Yeah, stressful, I bet. Yeah. So now you're back home and about to go back to school. Tell me a bit about some of the challenges that your school in Garden Hill continues to face.
One thing, my biggest concern is going to school here is our lack of school programs. I spoke yesterday with Corey about how my school doesn't even offer any science courses for their students. And my biggest concern is how do they expect us, the students, to get into STEM without the adequate courses in our high school?
Yeah. Corey is Corey Funk, who's, of course, one of our associate producers here on the show, who was making arrangements to get you on air with us here. Does that worry you when you think about, as a student, what opportunities, you highlighted that across the country they want more kids in STEM, and yet you don't even have the chance, right?
Yeah.
In terms of the physical space that you've got there in Garden Hill, you guys are supposed to get a new school, because there's problems at the school. So where are things at with that?
I haven't heard much of anything regarding the new school. things here are still pretty bad considering one of our hallways are still blocked off, meaning we have almost no space for any more courses. We have mobile homes as classrooms outside of our school, which provides a temporary solution, but I don't think it's the best.
What's that like for you? CBC was up there. You and I met face to face, and it was 2 years ago already when you were hoping that they'd open the hallways and such. Is your lunchroom open now?
Our lunchroom is open now, yes. We do use the lunchroom for breakfast and lunch. It is no longer considered a classroom, which is one thing that happened right after I was elected as student councillor, which I'm really glad happened.
So that's a good thing, but still those mold issues happening. How concerned are you that you're going to have to be dealing with this until they actually, manage to build that new school that's promised?
Given I only have 2 years left in high school, I think it's very plausible for me to only be going to school in the school we have now, which I think will be a struggle for me considering I want to go to university and I want to get into STEM. But I think if you work hard enough, you can achieve anything anywhere.
I love that attitude. So you want to go to university. What are you dreaming about? I know you're going to grade 11, but what are you hoping to study, I should say?
One of my big topics right now is psychology. I want to get into a Bachelor's of Arts program. I want to get experience counseling, and I want to get into my master's. Some schools I've been looking at right now are RMC, UBC, U of T, and obviously UM.
Got it. So you're already thinking about your post-education, post-secondary. You said you wanted to get into STEM, and then you also said, though, that the prep for STEM's not there. What would that even mean if you end up wanting to pursue something in addition to psychology, like you want to do the science, science and math route, for example? Would you have to take extra courses to get into those university programs because they're not offered in Garden Hill?
One thing I've heard from someone in the RBC Future Leaders program with Outside Looking In, he's a mentor and he became a paramedic. He didn't have his prerequisites for paramedicine. So what he did was he had extra courses and he completed them over a span of a few months before getting into paramedicine. So if I don't get the opportunities I can get right now to get into STEM, I believe I'll have to take extra courses and during my time in the city just to be able to go to university.
What does that make you feel like, that you would have to do that extra work?
I think it's unnecessary when our school probably has the capability to give us the courses we need.
Yeah. I want to ask you a bit more about evacuation. I mentioned in the introduction, because, students in the north, especially in areas like yours where you're evacuated, I mean, that's tough, right? You're bouncing around all summer and probably feel like your summer's really affected. Where did you stay in that month? You went place to place in Winnipeg?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
I first started off being evacuated to the RBC site on Leela, the soccer stadium. I stayed there for a couple of hours before my family got moved to the airport hotel. And at the airport hotel, a shooting happened. Our chief and council wasn't comfortable with us staying there. So they moved us out and we went to the RBC Convention Center in downtown Winnipeg, where another Red Cross site was. We stayed there for about a week before getting moved into another hotel. And that's where I stayed.
That's a lot. How did it impact you emotionally going through all that this summer?
It was really depressing, actually. And considering the fact that I wasn't doing anything for work, I soon became very broke, which I'm not used to considering how much I work.
You work at a store up there, right?
Yeah. Yeah. While I was up there, while I was down there, I tried applying for any job I could. I didn't get accepted into anything until my community needed workers at their command center. So I soon volunteered and became a worker for our health services.
How did that help you to be part of helping with people, then at least having that to be doing?
I was doing data entry work for all the workers during the evacuation. I was able to manage people's timesheets, give them their checks, and overall just look after what they've been doing for the past month.
How has your community now bounced back after the evacuation? I mean, you're starting school next week, you said. Everyone's back now. How are things feeling in Garden Hill?
Everyone is back, and everything mostly seems back to normal. The store seems very populated. All my coworkers are back. I see a lot of people in the community. And when I was flying in on the plane, you could definitely see some deforestation in like the more isolated parts of the reserve, like the place where people don't live.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a heartbreaking sight, but I honestly expected to be so much worse with the amount of smoke I saw when I first left.
Got it. So some changes to your environment there. It's a beautiful part of Manitoba. With the water there, Island Lake, and then all the trees there. So some changes. We'll see what happens with the forest in the future. Stay safe up there, Joshua, and also good luck with grade 11 next week. Thank you so much for giving us some time on CBC.
Yep. Thank you so much.
That is bye. That's Joshua McPherson. Starting grade 11 this year at Garden Hill High School. They will return next week. Now, I mentioned that there's some problems in the school there. I mean, those mold issues continue to persist, closing off part of the school so it's safe for the students, but then they're crammed into other spots. And there's also obviously some concerns about curriculum as well. To the mold, though, and the physical issues, that school was promised last November from the federal government. We'll make some school follow-up calls, rather, about the Garden Hill School and bring you those follow-ups in a future interview once we learn more from the federal government.
Breaking news happens anywhere, anytime.
Police have warned the protesters repeatedly, get back.
CBC News brings the story to you as it happens.
Hundreds of wildfires are burning.
Be the first to know what's going on and what that means for you and for Canadians.
This situation has changed very quickly.
Helping make sense of the world when it matters most. Stay in the know. CBC News.
I love talking to bright young people. It makes my day, man. Mostly cloudy in Winnipeg, 7 degrees. Rain coming, 5 to 10 millimeters expected. Well, next on the show, wait times in emergency rooms continue to be a concern for some people in Winnipeg. It comes after the Manitoba government launched a team of frontline workers back in May who were tasked with cutting wait times by addressing issues across the healthcare system. Now, CBC's Rosanna Hempel spoke with a couple of patients at Health Sciences Centre's ER about their experiences. She first spoke with Arlene Kennington, who said that she left the ER after waiting 8 hours.
Told me that you were experiencing some symptoms. Could you let us know what that was and when you came to the hospital yesterday?
Yes, I went to the Health Science Center for an appointment with my arm doctor, and all of a sudden I started feeling like eyesight went, my head went funny, my hearing went funny. So they took me from his office, brought me over here to the ER, which I don't remember. And then they did an EKG, took my blood. 9 o'clock, still nothing from any doctor. And I was still feeling the same way, and I thought I might as well go home and feel the same way. From 1 o'clock till 9 o'clock, I just couldn't do it anymore. Phoned my doctor this morning. She says, no, you have to go back and wait. It doesn't matter if it's 20 hours. And I know people here yesterday were waiting 20 hours. I talked to them. So I had to come back today. And I'm still having the same symptoms. And it's like symptoms of a stroke. And I told them yesterday what was happening. But what can you do?
Yesterday you were here for 8 hours.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you tell me more about what you heard from other people?
Like other people have waited 20 hours. I just saw a guy that was here yesterday and he was in a gown. Like, people are waiting forever. And when you got symptoms like I do right now, my head is killing me. And I'm dizzy. My eyes are foggy. And you don't see a doctor for 8 hours. You might as well go home and feel like that, where you're comfortable. But it's scary.
Did they say anything inside on the PA system, or was anything communicated to you why the waits were so long?
Yesterday at 9 o'clock, the night nurse come in and said, we are experiencing lots of delays, so it could be a long night for everybody. Please have patience with us. and we'll do what we can. And I decided to leave. I couldn't wait anymore. I thought I might as well go home and be sick.
My name is Norm Penton. I got here yesterday roughly about 12:30 in the afternoon. I was in triage for about an hour and 20 minutes. And then from there, I went over to the waiting room. I waited till about 6:30. And they moved me in the back, but I was a high priority. So I got some major problems with my neck and my back. I'm going in for surgery either tomorrow or Friday. But they were moving patients in from other hospitals. I guess there was a bunch of critical stuff going on, and I don't know all the technical terms. And then the wait times increased up to 30 hours. I had a personal friend of mine come in. He was in triage for almost 6.5 hours, and I don't know where he is now. I haven't seen him. I don't know if he left because he was pissed off because the wait times are so long. But the wait times are long here. But you got to remember the part of the city that we live in. A lot of people live in this area that they come here not just for medical help. They come here to sleep because they don't want to be outside in the cold.
The hours after you arrived, what did they say on the PA?
They just said all wait times would be increased, and then there was a problem with all the lab equipment. They couldn't get the blood work and all that kind of stuff done, so it increased the wait times even more.
Anything else you want to share about the wait times in general?
The wait times, it's going to be expected because there's, like I said, the area, the city that we live in. And also, I just want to give a big shout out to all the nurses and doctors that are here. They're working their asses off to see everybody and to get everybody the proper help that they need.
CBC's Rosanna Hempel talking to patients Arlene Kennington and Norm Penton outside HSC's ER yesterday. The Winnipeg Regional Health Authority tells CBC there's often a surge in capacity following a long weekend. And of course, you can read more about these stories on our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba. Marjorie Dalhouse has popped into our studio to tell us about the call-in on Radio Noon today.
Well, hello, Marcy. September is World Alzheimer's Awareness Month. So we're going to have the Alzheimer's Society here in Manitoba join us on the show today to take any questions that you may have about resources, not just for those who have dementia or Alzheimer's, but of course for caregivers, because they go through a lot as well too. And if you have any questions too about, how you can seek diagnosis, if you feel that you could possibly have Alzheimer's or dementia, call us today with any questions, share a story here on Radio Noon after 12:30.
All right, thanks a lot.
Thanks, Marcy.
So between 12:30 and 1 o'clock, important topic, obviously, and always evolving when it comes to the science as well. So if you want to leave a message on this World Alzheimer's Awareness Month, you can as well, 788-3797. Your news is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 8:30, it is 7 degrees. We're not warming up a whole lot today. Be prepared to get a little chilly because our high is just 10, and we're expecting rain today, 5 to 10 millimeters throughout the day. A serious incident happening right now in Hollow Water First Nation. Powerview RCMP, along with officers from surrounding detachments and specialized RCMP units, have all been called to that community for what is being described as a serious incident that happened this morning. We don't know the nature of the incident, but police say at this time there is no risk to public safety. People in Hollow Water are being told to expect a heavy police presence throughout the day. Provincial Road 304 is closed in both directions south of Black River First Nation. And we expect to hear more as RCMP Major Crimes leads this investigation in Hollow Water. What's in a name? As school begins in Sage Creek this morning, a lot of effort has gone into the name for the community's new school. CBC reporter Megan Ketchison is in Sage Creek this morning and joins us live. Megan?
Well, I'm at the brand new Ecole Sage Creek Bonavista, and the bell just went. This is where 813 students are going to be going. It's a French immersion school, K-8, and the families here have been waiting a long time for this school to open. It's a building neighborhood with lots of families, lots of kisses and hugs as the kids are now heading in towards school. Now, it won't be named Ecole Sage Creek Bonavista for long. I was speaking with Principal Cam Johnson, and he says that they are choosing a new name through the community, and it is in honor of Justice Murray Sinclair. And it's more to the name than just that. It's about his impact.
there's the legacy piece, and what do we do today? What do we do tomorrow? The students that come through the building are here in kindergarten through grade 8, and they move on, but then new students are coming through too. So it is about learning, and it is about instilling the values and the ideas, and then making them part of who they are as people.
And the school was designed with the 7 teachings in mind. There's 6 different areas to the school, and then a 7th one in the main hallway that will all be incorporated into the 7 teachings. A lot of the parents and the kids that I've spoken to are super excited to be going to the school. It even smells new inside. There are still some boxes in the hallway, but for the most part, it's set up and ready to go. Reporting live, Megan Ketchison, CBC News.
Thanks so much, Megan. Well, frequent shoppers at the Unicity Walmart say they are not surprised by an armed robbery this week. Winnipeg police say 4 teens filled backpacks with merchandise on Tuesday. When a security officer tried to stop them, a suspect shot at him with an air gun, just missing his head. Jessica Angel has lived in that area for 20 years.
I won't come in the evening. We don't come. Even my 7-year-old son wants to come and get pop or whatever in the night, and nope. Like after 8:30, forget it. Like he's not coming here to shop.
2 13-year-olds, a 15-year-old, and a 17-year-old face several charges, including armed robbery. A private university is calling on the province to give it more spots to enroll students from other countries. Providence University College says it's seen a 90% cut to international student admissions. As a result, it says it's been forced to sell property and cut courses because of a drop in tuition revenue. Providence Provost Nicholas Greco says big schools aren't using all their spots, so he requested 600. In the end, he received a total of 120.
We can fill those spots. We also have recruiters that we're working closely with in other places to get those students.
The province says it prioritizes public schools and labor market needs when handing out spots. The MLA for Interlake Gimli hopes cooler heads prevail over whiskey. On Tuesday, Ontario Premier Doug Ford poured out a bottle of Crown Royal in protest over an announced plant closure. Multinational distiller Diageo will close bottling operations near Windsor, but it is still making whiskey at its other locations, including in Gimli. Derek Johnson has a message for Ontario Premier Doug Ford.
I suppose if Doug Ford wants to continue pouring out Crown Royal, we'll keep producing it right here in the Interlake. I kind of think that there's a lot of people that would like to put their glass underneath the bottle and capture and enjoy some of that Canadian-made alcohol. But I do understand his frustration.
Johnson says if Ontario is considering pulling any whiskey from its liquor stores, it should be Jack Daniel's. You can find more Manitoba news updated throughout the day as it develops, including that serious incident that is happening right now in Hollow Water First Nation. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right. Thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you.
I want to give thanks to those people who worked on our program this morning. So we had Jim Agapito, our reporter in unit. Also, I want to give thanks to those that, Corey Funk, that put together some of our interviews this morning on the program, and Jenna Badasso, who worked on items in the show this morning as well. Also to Leif Larson and Anelli Gonzalez, our producers in our unit here at Current Affairs at CBC Manitoba. Thanks to Heather Wells and Megan Ketchison and Aaron Broman, I believe, who is out there for our news center this morning. And then here in our live crew studio, thanks to Brad Lillies and Abby Adiami. Speaking of which, Abby, last word in the road?
Watch out for that motor vehicle collision near the Ebono-Jamaican Emerge eastbound approaching Pemina. Just approach carefully. The lights at Murray and Portage and Murray now all clear. Construction still slowing things down. Disraeli and Logan, Broadway, Osborne. Just take it easy out there. School zone still at 30 kilometers.
All right. Thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
And we're still waiting for the rain, as Heather mentioned, 5 to 10 in Winnipeg. It's already raining in Brandon and Portage, so it's coming our way. Thanks, everyone, for listening to us this morning on Information Radio. Have a great first day back at school if today's your day. And we'll talk to you again tomorrow right here on CBC's Information Radio, 89.3 FM. The Current is coming up next. Stay with us.